Welcome to the Tired Thinker, where curiosity stirs in the dark and certainty stays just out of reach. Tonight, we turn toward impossible riddles, those questions that do not yield, that twist and shimmer just beyond reason's grasp. They aren't meant to be solved, but felt, the way silence feels after a truth slips away. What is a riddle, if not the mind playing hide-and-seek with itself? What if the answer isn't missing, just transformed, waiting in another form of wonder? So, tonight, we won't chase conclusions. We'll walk the edge where meaning dissolves and let the mystery breathe. If this space helps you think softly, I'd be grateful if you liked or subscribed, so more wanderers might find their way here. Now, let's begin. There are questions that behave like living things. They seem to breathe as you get closer. You move toward them thinking there is something solid waiting at the center. But the moment you touch it, it changes shape. The question consumes what you bring to it. Each time you find an answer, it folds in on itself and becomes something else. This is what makes some riddles impossible. They are not broken puzzles. They are traps built out of meaning itself. Think of a child asking why the sky is blue. You explain about light scattering, about how shorter wavelengths spread more. The child listens and then asks, "Why does light scatter?" You answer again, and the question grows. Why does light exist? Why does anything exist? The path never ends. Every answer feeds the next question. You begin to see that curiosity isn't a ladder, but a circle. You are not climbing toward truth. You are walking around it. Some questions hide this pattern well. They sound as if they have clear solutions, and you approach them with reason and method. For example, consider the question, what is consciousness? You can describe brain activity, chemical processes, or neural pathways. You can even explain how a thought travels through a network of cells. Yet the heart of the question remains untouched. The act of explaining consciousness happens within consciousness itself. The question swallows its own answer. Philosophy is full of these kinds of questions. They are not mistakes in logic, but mirrors that reveal how thinking works. When you ask, can a machine truly think? You first have to decide what thinking means. As soon as you define it, you realize your answer depends on the definition you made. If you change the definition, the answer changes too. The problem is not with the question, but with the nature of definition itself. Every attempt to frame meaning limits what can be seen. In daily life, we meet smaller versions of the same problem. You might ask, what makes me happy? You try to answer by naming things: work, love, safety, freedom. You might even test your ideas. You get the job, you fall in love, you feel safe. For a while, you think you found the answer. Then something shifts. The same job feels heavy, the same love starts to hurt, and safety turns to boredom. The question returns, stronger than before. The earlier answer has been digested by time and feeling. You have to ask again, but now the question is different. The mind likes to believe that knowledge moves in straight lines. You start from not knowing and end at knowing. But experience doesn't fit this shape. You often circle the same idea for years, seeing it from new angles. You might think this means you're failing to understand, but it's the opposite. The repetition means the question is alive. It is shaping you as much as you are shaping it. In science, some questions lead to discoveries that seem to close them, only for the answers to create deeper puzzles. When Newton described gravity, it explained why objects fall. For centuries, that seemed enough. Then Einstein came and asked a new question. What if gravity isn't a force, but the bending of space and time? The answer changed everything and created new mysteries about what space-time is made of. Each discovery opens a new door. The act of understanding extends the horizon. The closer you get, the further it moves. There's a quiet beauty in this cycle. It means knowledge is not a fixed possession, but a motion. To learn is to walk within something that cannot be finished. You can see this in art too. A painter might chase a feeling across a lifetime of work. Each painting looks complete, but for the artist, it is only another approach, another failed attempt to say the unsayable. The question, what does this feeling look like, never ends. The next canvas begins because the last answer dissolved the moment it was made. In relationships, the same dynamic plays out. You might think you know someone well. You understand their habits, their fears, their ways of speaking. Then one day, they surprise you. They act out of character. You realize your understanding was partial, a snapshot of a moving life. The question of who they are eats your certainty. To know someone fully would be to stop them from growing. The mystery is part of the bond. The question sustains it. Some riddles in philosophy are built around this self-devouring nature. Can an omnipotent being create a stone so heavy it cannot lift it? The structure forces contradiction. If yes, then it cannot lift it, meaning it is not omnipotent. If no, then it cannot create it, meaning it is not omnipotent either. The question consumes itself. Its purpose is not to find an answer, but to expose the limits of language and logic. It shows that some ideas collapse when pushed too far. Even the idea of truth works this way. Ask what truth is, and you can describe accuracy, correspondence, or coherence. But then you must ask what those words mean. What counts as accurate? What defines reality? Every definition leads back to interpretation, and interpretation depends on the one interpreting. The answer turns back toward the asker. When we face these riddles, frustration is natural. We are trained to think of questions as problems to fix. But some questions are better understood as reflections. They exist so that you can see the boundaries of your own understanding. The more you try to trap them, the more they slip through your hands. The moment you declare, "Now I know," the question changes shape and swallows what you just said. It is possible to find peace in that movement, to know that knowledge isn't an end point, but a rhythm. You don't defeat these questions. You live with them. You walk beside them the way a sailor follows a shifting current, knowing it will never stop but will always carry you forward. When understanding dissolves the moment you reach it, it isn't failure. It is proof that the world is alive. That thought is still breathing, that the mind has not closed around itself. Some riddles stay impossible because they are meant to keep us awake. Stand in front of a mirror and you expect honesty. You expect it to show what's there. Yet the reflection you see is not what others see. It's reversed, slightly distorted, filtered through light and perspective. It's familiar because you've seen it every day, but it's not accurate. Photographs prove this. Most people dislike how they look in photos because the image doesn't match what they see in the mirror. The mirror tells one truth and the camera tells another. Both are correct in their own way, yet neither captures the whole. This small difference holds a larger idea. You never see yourself the way others do. You build your sense of self through reflections, through mirrors, memories, and the reactions of other people. Each reflection offers a version of you, shaped by where you stand and what you expect to see. Some versions flatter, others sting. Some feel distant, like a stranger wearing your skin. Each one tells a truth that doesn't agree with the rest. Imagine a student giving a presentation. She believes she sounds nervous, stumbling over her words, avoiding eye contact. Afterward, her classmates say she seemed confident. To then, she looked composed. Her reflection in their eyes doesn't match the one in her mind. Which one is real? Both exist. One is internal, one external. The gap between them creates tension, a quiet uncertainty that never fully goes away. You can see this in how people adjust their behavior based on audience. A manager might speak with authority in a meeting, then question every decision alone. A parent might appear calm to a child, hiding fear behind a soft tone. The outer image tells one truth: competence, steadiness, control. The inner experience tells another: doubt, fatigue, confusion. The two truths contradict, yet both are real. The mirror lies by showing one without the other. Think about how mirrors change over time. As a child, you stare into one and see potential. The face looking back hasn't settled. You imagine futures in it. As you age, the mirror keeps showing new stories. Lines appear, hair shifts, eyes carry weight they didn't before. The person you see feels both you and not you. You recognize the structure, but not the expression. You might even look away, not because the mirror lies, but because it tells a truth you don't want to face yet. The mind also works like a mirror, but one that bends. When you remember yourself from years ago, you don't see the full picture. You see the version your current self allows. You edit details, soften pain, heighten victories. The memory reflects what fits the story you tell now. Someone else might remember you differently. They might recall moments you forgot or ignored. Their version clashes with yours. The disagreement doesn't mean either is false. It means identity is built from moving reflections, each tied to perspective. In relationships, mirrors multiply. Each person becomes one. Your partner sees you through affection and expectation. Your parents see you through the lens of history. Your friends see the side you reveal when you feel safe. The reflections overlap but never match. They form a collage of truths, none complete. You might wish they would align, that everyone could see the same you. But the human image was never meant to be consistent. It grows and shifts with every gaze. Consider how social media works as a hall of mirrors. You post a picture, a thought, a glimpse of your life. Likes and comments reflect back how people perceive it. You start to adjust, sharing what earns approval, avoiding what doesn't. Over time, the version of you that others see can drift far from how you feel. You live between two mirrors, the digital one and the private one. Both reflect truth, but neither captures you fully. The gap between them can cause unease, even exhaustion. You begin to feel like a character in your own story. There's also a subtler kind of reflection, the emotional one. You walk into a room and people respond to your mood before you speak. A frown makes others tense. A smile relaxes them. You notice their reaction and adjust, sometimes without thinking. They mirror you back, and you mirror them. The process creates a feedback loop. In groups, this can lead to shared moods, collective joy or worry that spreads without a word. Each person becomes a surface for the others, reflecting what they think they see. The truth moves between them, impossible to locate in one person alone. Art plays with this idea too. When you read a novel or watch a film, you project parts of yourself into it. You see your fears, your desires, your regrets. The story becomes a mirror, but one that changes shape for each viewer. Two people can watch the same movie and walk away with opposite meanings. The work doesn't lie. It simply reflects the truth each person brings. You can test this in a smaller way. The next time you talk to someone, notice how their expression changes as you speak. Notice how their eyes widen or soften, how their voice shifts in response. Those small movements are reflections. They tell you how they see you in that moment. But they also tell you who they need you to be. The reflection isn't neutral, it's relational. Every mirror responds to context. There are times when you might wish for one clear reflection, to know without doubt who you are and how you appear. But identity doesn't work that way. It's not fixed glass, it's water. Each surface you meet ripples with its own motion. Try to hold it still, and it slips away. The reflection lies truthfully because it tells part of the story with perfect accuracy, just not the whole story. The mirror that lies truthfully reminds us that contradiction is natural. You can be kind and impatient, confident and unsure, seen and unseen, all at once. Each reflection captures a piece of that. Together, they form something close to reality, though never exact. What you learn over time is not to trust one mirror above all, but to notice the pattern between them. That space, the one between reflection and reality, is where the truest part of you quietly waits to be seen. There are moments that feel final, but never are. You close a door, finish a task, end a day, and believe something is complete. But as soon as you pause, you notice how things begin again in quiet ways. The door opens for someone else. The task repeats in a new form. The next day looks much like the last. Life gives you the illusion of endings, but what you're really seeing is a loop disguised as a line. The whisper of infinity hides in those small turns, telling you that nothing ever fully stops. Think about a song on repeat. You reach the end, and a second later, it starts again. The first note feels familiar, yet slightly different because you know what's coming. The repetition doesn't erase the meaning, it deepens it. You begin to hear patterns you missed before. The same thing happens in thought. You might believe you've moved past an idea, a memory, or a habit, but it finds its way back, carrying something new each time. The loop is not failure, it's rhythm. Infinity doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It hums quietly beneath everything that moves. You see it in the tide returning to shore, in the heart that beats without your asking, in breath that flows in and out without pause. Even in sleep, when the mind drifts, the body continues its cycle. You wake to the same world, slightly changed, but still spinning. Each morning feels like a reset, but it's only the continuation of a circle that never truly broke. Consider how people talk about progress. We describe it as moving forward, climbing upward, breaking through. Yet progress often loops back. You learn lessons you thought you already knew. You fall into old mistakes, find yourself in familiar arguments, feel the same emotions in new settings. It can seem frustrating, but these loops are part of how understanding deepens. Growth rarely moves in straight lines. It spirals. Each turn brings you closer to what you were trying to grasp the first time. The idea of infinity unsettles some because it denies finality. Humans crave closure. We want the book to end, the problem to be solved, the feeling to resolve. Infinity says, there is no end, only continuation. It's not a threat, but a quiet truth. You can see this in history. Civilizations rise and fall, yet the same themes repeat: ambition, conflict, art, decay, rebirth. The faces and tools change, but the story remains the same pattern unfolding again. Each era believes it's new, but it's another verse in a long song that never stops playing. There's a story about a man who tries to trace a perfect circle in the sand. Each day he draws it, and each day the tide washes it away. At first he feels defeated. His effort seems wasted. Then he realizes the sea isn't undoing his work, it's completing it. The erasure is part of the cycle. His drawing and the tide together form something larger, a partnership of repetition. The circle isn't in the sand. It's in the motion between making and losing. Infinity also hides in ordinary routines. You brush your teeth, wash dishes, fold laundry. These tasks return daily, and while they seem small, they hold the structure of continuity. The repetition gives shape to time. Without it, days would blur. Loops like these anchor you, offering a rhythm to exist within. The whisper of infinity is not loud or dramatic. It's in the patterns that sustain life. Relationships follow similar patterns. People meet, connect, drift apart, and sometimes reconnect. Conversations circle around familiar topics. Old memories resurface during new moments. Even the conflicts repeat in quieter tones, not as failures, but as reminders of what hasn't been fully understood. Love itself moves in loops of distance and return, of speaking and silence, of remembering and forgetting. Each cycle holds a chance to see something you missed before. In nature, loops define existence. The water cycle, the food chain, the rotation of planets, all are repetitions that sustain life. A leaf falls, decays, nourishes soil, feeds a new tree. You could say the leaf ends, but its matter continues elsewhere. Infinity doesn't need endless space to exist. It exists in the recycling of form. What dies becomes what grows. What ends becomes what starts again. The whisper is in the handoff. Even thoughts loop. You might believe you've outgrown a fear or an idea, but it comes back dressed in new words. A doubt you had at 15 returns at 40, wearing the face of responsibility instead of youth. The content shifts, but the structure stays. The loop doesn't mock you. It shows you that understanding moves in depth, not distance. Each return gives you another chance to see the same question from a new height. Technology mirrors this too. Software updates, cycles of innovation, trends that vanish and return with new names. Humanity builds, pauses, rebuilds. What seems like progress often repeats the same desires through different tools. The loop hides beneath the surface of advancement. Even the internet, with all its speed and noise, runs on endless cycles, data transferring, signals repeating, systems refreshing. It moves fast enough to seem linear, but it's built on repetition. Time itself behaves like this. You think of it as a straight path, past, present, future, but it doesn't always feel that way. A song from childhood can pull you backward. A smell can place you years away from now. The mind doesn't travel through time in one direction. It loops between memories and possibilities, weaving them into a continuous thread. The whisper of infinity lives in that thread, not as a sound, but as a sense, the feeling that you've been here before and will be again. There's a quiet comfort in seeing loops instead of lines. It means nothing is ever completely lost. What fades returns in another form. The people you miss live in your gestures and habits. The things you've learned resurface when needed. Even silence, which feels like absence, contains the pulse of sound waiting to begin again. Infinity's whisper is always there, beneath every pause, reminding you that the end you fear is only the start of another rhythm pretending to stop. Some problems only look real because we keep pulling at them. They feel tight and urgent, but when you stop tugging, you see there's nothing there. The knot was never tied. It existed only because you believed it did. The mind creates these kinds of knots all the time. They appear as worries, misunderstandings, or endless questions. You try to fix them, but the more you try, the tighter they seem to get. Think about the moment when you lose something small, your keys, your phone, a piece of paper. You search every corner of the room. You grow tense, convinced it must be hidden somewhere close. Then, after minutes of frustration, you find it in plain sight, sitting on the table. The knot unravels instantly, not because you solved it, but because it never existed. The struggle was real, but the problem was not. That's how many of life's confusions work. They live in the space between what is and what you think should be. In relationships, this kind of knot appears often. One person says something simple, and the other reads meaning into it that isn't there. A pause in a text message becomes rejection. A sigh turns into disappointment. Each side tries to explain, clarify, defend. Hours of talk pass, but the tension remains. The knot won't loosen because there was no real rope, just assumption, fear, and projection. When one person finally steps back and says, "Maybe there's nothing to fix," the air clears. The knot dissolves into nothing. Our thoughts do this on a larger scale too. You might spend years trying to define who you are, measuring yourself against expectations. You try to be a certain kind of person, successful, calm, wise, happy. You chase those traits like ropes you need to hold together. But identity isn't built that way. There's no single line to tie. The more you search for a fixed sense of self, the more tangled it feels. Then, one day, you realize you don't need to tie anything. You can just exist as the movement itself. The knot becomes air again. This can happen in work as well. A designer might struggle for hours to make something perfect. They adjust every line, every color, trying to find balance. The harder they work, the worse it looks. Then they step away, breathe, and return later. With a fresh eye, they see that the problem wasn't in the design. It was in their grip on it. They were trying to fix what wasn't broken. Once they stop forcing it, the work falls into place naturally. The effort wasn't wasted, but the struggle was unnecessary. The human mind dislikes open space. It wants structure, causes, and effects. When it can't find them, it invents them. That's how false knots form. You might wake in the middle of the night thinking about a comment someone made earlier. You replay it, searching for hidden meaning. You build stories around it. What they meant, what you should have said, what might happen next. The next morning, they greet you with warmth, unaware of your long night of overthinking. You spent hours pulling at a rope that didn't exist. Even in philosophy, thinkers have met this kind of illusion. The question, "What is the meaning of life?" sounds deep and necessary, but it assumes life is a riddle to solve. What if it isn't? What if meaning isn't hidden behind events, waiting to be discovered? Then the question itself becomes the knot. People spend lifetimes trying to untie it through religion, science, or art. Yet sometimes the simplest response is silence, a kind of quiet acceptance that there was never a rope, only the motion of living. In meditation, this truth appears clearly. You sit down, close your eyes, and try to quiet your thoughts. At first, they race. You judge them, chase them, push them away. The mind feels full of knots, fear, memory, desire. But with time, you notice they untie themselves when left alone. You realize you don't have to fight them. They were never tied to begin with. The effort to control was the only thing keeping them tight. Language itself can form knots. People argue over words that carry different meanings for each person. Freedom, truth, love. Each one seems simple until you look closer. Then it splits into layers of history and emotion. Two people can use the same word and mean entirely different things. They debate for hours, each pulling harder, not realizing the rope they're holding isn't shared. The knot is born from the illusion of agreement. When they see that, the tension disappears. Memory adds another layer. You remember an event, replay it, and swear it happened a certain way. Someone else remembers it differently. You both defend your versions. Each insists on the truth of their recollection, but memory is flexible, shaped by feeling and need. It's not a rope, but smoke. Trying to align memories perfectly is like trying to tie smoke into a knot. It only scatters. The peace comes from realizing it was never solid in the first place. Even emotions follow this pattern. Anxiety, for example, often starts from a single thought: something might go wrong. The mind seizes on it, repeats it, amplifies it. Soon it feels like a real threat. But when you trace it back, you find no proof, only the echo of fear itself. The anxiety was a knot without rope. Once you see that, you can breathe again. The feeling loosens on its own. Sometimes creativity depends on leaving these knots alone. Writers know this well. You can stare at a blank page, trying to force the right words, and nothing comes. The harder you try, the more it resists. Then you walk away, wash dishes, or take a walk. The idea returns, whole and simple. It was never tied up. It only needed space to appear. The knot was an illusion of control. The same happens in conversations, decisions, and even love. The more you try to hold something still, the more it slips away. You believe there's a problem to solve, a misunderstanding to fix, a feeling to define. Yet sometimes there's only movement, two people shifting, thoughts changing, hearts growing. You can't untie what was never bound. You can only let it move freely. The knot without rope teaches something quiet but powerful. Many of our struggles come not from what is real, but from the stories we wrap around what's real. When you stop pulling, stop forcing shape where there is none, you see things as they are, fluid, open, unbound. The knot falls apart, not with effort, but with understanding that it never existed to begin with. There are moments when words fail, and not because we lack vocabulary. The failure happens because some experiences can't fit inside the limits of language. We reach for a word, and it collapses before it touches what we mean. You can call it grief, love, or awe, but none of those sounds carry the full weight of the feeling. Words can point toward truth, but they can't hold it. They are tools, and tools always leave marks that don't match the shape of what they touch. Think about how people use the word love. It covers too much. You can love a person, a song, a meal, a memory, or a quiet evening. The word stays the same, but the meaning changes each time. You might tell a friend, "I love you," and mean it as deep care. You might tell a partner, "I love you," and mean it as something that holds your life together. You might tell a stranger's story, "I love that," and mean it as appreciation. One word wears too many faces. It starts to mean everything, and in doing so, starts to mean nothing. This happens because language trades in symbols, not sensations. A word stands in for an experience, but never becomes it. If someone asks you to describe the taste of salt, you can say sharp, clean, or mineral. None of those truly capture the moment it touches your tongue. You can only know salt by tasting it. Words bring you near, but never inside. The mind builds bridges, and language builds maps. But reality lives beyond both. You can see this gap clearly in grief. When someone you love dies, people come to you with words meant to comfort. They say, "I'm sorry for your loss," or "they're in a better place." The words are kind, but they can't touch the hollow space that grief creates. The silence after those words often says more. In that silence, you can feel the truth that language can't express. The heaviness of absence, the strange stillness where someone used to be. Words fold there, like paper in the rain. Poets and philosophers have spent centuries trying to stretch language around what can't be described. They build metaphors, layer meanings, and twist syntax to reach a little closer. But even the most perfect line stops short. Take the word infinite. It describes something that has no end, but our minds still imagine a kind of long line extending forever. We can't truly picture infinity. The word gives us the illusion of understanding while quietly admitting its own limits. In daily life, this plays out in smaller ways. Imagine trying to describe a sunset to someone who's never seen one. You can talk about colors, orange melting into pink, the sky darkening into violet. You can mention the way light hits the clouds or how the air cools as the sun drops. But the experience isn't in the words, it's in the seeing. The more you describe, the further it slips away. The moment you name it, you lose it. The word sunset is a shadow of the event itself. The problem grows sharper when language is used for emotion. Say you're trying to explain anxiety. You can talk about racing thoughts, tension, or the feeling of a weight on your chest. These are accurate, but only partly. Anxiety moves, it shifts shape, hides, appears without reason. The word helps name it, which gives you a sense of control. But the naming also simplifies something complex. The truth of anxiety is in the body, not the vocabulary. Even simple words carry this weakness. The word now sounds clear, but by the time you say it, it's already past. The moment moves faster than speech. The word points towards something that never stays still long enough to be captured. Language tries to box time, but time doesn't fit. In that sense, every word we use for the present moment means nothing. It arrives too late. Sometimes people use silence to say what words can't. In a hospital room, someone holds another's hand. No one speaks. The gesture carries what sentences never could. The absence of words becomes its own language, direct, human, untranslatable. The same happens in music. A song can express sorrow or joy that you couldn't explain even if you tried. The notes move through feeling, not grammar. The meaning is understood without words because it was never meant for them. Language also folds under contradiction. Think about the phrase, I am. It seems simple until you try to define what I means. The self you describe changes every moment. New cells, new thoughts, new memories. The word tries to hold something fluid. I becomes a symbol of stability where none exists. It works well enough to communicate, but it doesn't match reality. The word is a placeholder for something we can't pin down. In science, words do the same thing. Terms like particle, wave, or space-time give shape to invisible forces. They allow us to discuss the structure of the universe, but they're only models. They simplify something that might be beyond comprehension. Even physicists admit that language breaks at the edge of quantum reality. The math describes behavior, but when you try to explain it in plain speech, the words twist. The universe doesn't fit into sentences. Think about how we say, I understand. It feels complete, like we've grasped something. But understanding is never final. You can know facts, you can repeat explanations, but the full meaning of anything keeps moving. The word understand suggests an end point, a place where learning stops. But in truth, every understanding opens another question. The word ends where the process continues. This is why spiritual traditions often turn to paradox or silence. Zen koans, for example, use language to push beyond language. What is the sound of one hand clapping? It's a riddle that can't be answered, only experienced. The question bends thought until it breaks, revealing a kind of knowing that doesn't need words. The goal isn't to define truth, but to see that truth can't be defined. We live in language, but it's a fragile shelter. It gives shape to the world, but can't contain it. Every word carries its own boundary. Sometimes the most honest thing you can say is nothing at all. The word that means nothing isn't empty. It's a quiet acknowledgement that not everything can be said. When language folds, what remains is the experience itself, silent and whole, waiting beyond the reach of speech. Some questions don't end when you find the answer. They shift. You think you've solved something, but the moment understanding arrives, it transforms what you were asking in the first place. The answer turns into a mirror. showing that your question was smaller or narrower than the truth it led to. You realize you weren't asking about what you thought at all. You were asking about something hidden underneath. Think about a child asking where rain comes from. You explain that clouds hold water vapor, and when the air cools, the vapor condenses into drops that fall. That's a good answer, accurate and simple. But one day the same child asks, "Why does it rain?" The question has changed. It's not about weather anymore. It's about purpose, maybe about fairness or the cycle of life. The science that satisfied the first question can't touch the second. The answer reshaped the question into something larger. This happens often as people grow. You start with questions that feel clear, about career, love, faith, or purpose. What should I do with my life? Sounds like it has a single solution. You look for direction, try jobs, move cities, or fall in love. Then you find an answer, but it doesn't give the peace you expected. The answer opens new questions. Why do I want this? Or what does success mean to me? You discover that the first question was only the doorway. The answer led you deeper, not out. Science moves the same way. Each discovery closes one mystery and opens another. When people learned that the Earth orbits the Sun, it seemed final. Then they asked what keeps it moving, which led to gravity. Gravity solved one question but created more. What is gravity made of? Why does mass bend space-time? Every answer demands a new form of asking. Knowledge grows in loops, not lines. The deeper you look, the more you realize that the question and the answer evolve together. In relationships, you can see this pattern clearly. At first, you might ask, "Do they love me?" It's a simple question about another person's feelings. Then you learn they do. You feel certain, at least for a while. But time changes both of you, and the question shifts. What does love mean to us now? Replaces it. The answer to the first question makes the second necessary. A new question doesn't erase what came before. It expands it. The answer didn't close the story, it deepened it. Philosophy thrives on this tension. The classic question, "What is truth?" has lived for thousands of years because every answer changes the terms. When people said truth was correspondence, matching reality as it is, that worked until someone asked, "What is reality?" Others said truth is coherence, ideas fitting together, but then asked, "Who decides what fits?" Each response forces a new question, as if truth itself keeps moving just out of reach. The answers aren't failures. They're proof that asking is alive. This shift happens in smaller, personal ways too. Someone might ask, "Why am I unhappy?" They search for causes, their job, their routine, a lack of meaning. They might change one of those things and feel better for a while. But then the feeling returns, and they ask again. The new question sounds familiar, but carries a deeper note. What do I expect happiness to feel like? The earlier answer revealed that the question wasn't about unhappiness at all. It was about expectation. The process isn't circular. It's more like peeling layers. Each answer exposes the next. Art often works like this. An artist starts with a question. What does loneliness look like? They paint, write, or compose until something feels right. The finished work seems like an answer, but when others see it, they ask new questions. Is this loneliness or freedom? Is it about one person or all of us? The artwork keeps changing depending on who encounters it. The creator's answer becomes everyone else's question. That's why art endures. It refuses to settle. Even small realizations can shift the frame. Imagine someone learning to play guitar. At first, they ask, "How do I play this chord?" They practice, memorize shapes, and gain skill. Then they reach a point where the question changes. It's no longer about technique. It becomes, "How do I make this sound like me?" The answer to the first question opens a wider one about expression. Learning turns into discovery. Each answer makes the next question possible. In conversation, the same pattern appears. Two people argue about something simple, like who was right in a past event. They trade facts and opinions, trying to win. But if one pauses and says, "Why does this matter to us?" the whole exchange shifts. The argument wasn't about facts, it was about feeling unseen or unheard. The new question changes everything. The answer doesn't just resolve conflict, it transforms the purpose of talking at all. History shows this too. Every generation asks questions shaped by its time. "How can we fly?" became, "How far can we go?" once the Wright brothers succeeded. "Can machines think?" turned into what makes thought human after computers appeared. Each breakthrough rewrites the old questions. Progress depends on answers that change the frame of asking. Without that shift, curiosity would stop. You can notice this pattern inside your own thoughts. A single idea can keep returning, changing form each time. You might wonder why a certain memory keeps surfacing, or why a familiar doubt follows you into new chapters of life. Each time you think you've resolved it, something new emerges. The answer didn't erase the question, it grew it. The human mind learns through this expansion, each revelation rearranging the landscape it came from. Language itself participates in this loop. Words evolve because understanding does. The word planet once meant a wandering star. Then astronomy changed, and the word changed with it. Atom once meant indivisible. Now we know it can be split. The answer to what something is alters the meaning of the word we use. Even definitions live inside this rhythm of discovery. There's a quiet comfort in realizing that the end of a question is rarely the end. It means we don't run out of things to wonder about. Each time you think you've arrived, you find a new horizon waiting. The answer is not a stop sign, but a turn in the path. You begin again, asking from a new place, shaped by what you just learned. The mind moves like water, changing course, carving new paths, never still. The answer that changes the question reminds us that understanding is not a single moment. It's a living movement, a conversation between what we know and what we have yet to ask. Every story seems to start somewhere. A first page, a first breath, a first thought. We like to believe that beginnings mark clear lines between what was and what is. But when you look closely, those lines blur. Every beginning depends on something that came before it, something unseen that set the stage. The idea of a clean start feels simple, but reality rarely works that way. What looks like the start of one thing is usually just a continuation of another. Think about birth. We call it the beginning of a life, but the process starts long before that first breath. A life forms through millions of small events, cells dividing, genes combining, time unfolding. Even those cells carry histories. The elements that make a body were once part of stars. When you trace it back, there's no single point where life begins. It's a long chain of causes stretching beyond sight. Birth is just the moment we notice the pattern becoming visible. The same applies to ideas. You might say, "I just had a great idea," as if it appeared out of nowhere. But the idea comes from somewhere: a conversation, a book, a sound, a memory. It's built from pieces that have been collecting quietly in your mind. The spark feels like a beginning, but it's really a point of connection. The mind gathers fragments, and when enough align, we call it a start. The paradox is that you can't find the true first thought. It always hides behind another. History repeats this illusion. People talk about the beginning of civilizations, movements, or nations. They name dates and events: the founding of a city, a revolution, a declaration. But each beginning depends on years of unseen buildup, discontent, discovery, preparation. The moment of action is just the point when the hidden becomes visible. Even when we call something the dawn of a new age, the light only reveals what was already forming in the dark. Consider a simpler example. You wake up one morning and decide to change your life. You start running, quit a habit, or take a new job. It feels like a clean break. But the decision didn't appear in that instant. It came from countless small thoughts and experiences that gathered over time. Maybe it was the way you felt last week, a story someone told, a quiet sense that something needed to shift. The beginning is an illusion made by the moment we notice change. The change itself was already moving beneath the surface. This pattern shows up in nature. A river begins at a spring, but where does the spring begin? The water comes from underground, from rain, from evaporation, from the sea. The start of the river depends on a system that never stops moving. Even when you trace it to its source, you find motion instead of stillness. The start dissolves into a cycle. The world doesn't deal in beginnings or endings, only transformations. Science offers the same lesson. For centuries, people asked about the beginning of the universe. The Big Bang Theory gave an answer: a point where space and time expanded from a single state. But even that beginning raises another question: what was before it? Some theories suggest there was no before, that time itself began at that point. Others propose cycles, multiverses, or quantum fluctuations. Each answer leads back to the same problem. If everything comes from something, can there ever be a true start? Or is every start just the visible crest of an endless wave? In personal memory, beginnings blur even more. Try to remember the first time you felt like yourself. You can name moments: your first friend, your first success, your first heartbreak, but none of them explain the whole. Identity doesn't start once, it keeps starting. You are born again through experience, reshaped by time. The person you were last year began before you knew it. Each change feels new, but it grows out of what came before. You don't begin from nothing. You begin from everything that has already happened. This paradox becomes clear in storytelling. Writers talk about the first line of a novel as if that's the real start. But the story starts earlier. In notes, in drafts, in the writer's mind, long before words appear. Even the first line points backward, hinting at a world that existed before the reader arrived. The opening only works because it carries echoes of a larger world. Every story begins in the middle of something. The reader just enters at a convenient point. You can feel this paradox in love too. People say, "That's the moment I fell in love." It sounds like a beginning, a sudden shift. But that moment only exists because of hundreds of small ones that came before. A glance, a conversation, a pause that lingered. You can name the moment you noticed it, but not the moment it began. Love doesn't have a start in time. It emerges, like dawn light, growing before you realize the sun is rising. Even awareness works this way. You might think, "Now I understand." But what you call understanding is the end of a process that started long before. You've been collecting clues, testing ideas, waiting for clarity. The aha moment feels like a start, but it's the visible surface of a long unseen chain. Learning doesn't begin when you notice it. It begins before you can measure it. This can change how you see your own life. People often wait for a clear beginning, a sign, a fresh start, a clean slate. They want to know when the real story begins, but maybe it already has. Maybe it never stopped. The moment you wait for might be happening now, woven into all the small things you're overlooking. The first step isn't always visible. Sometimes you've already taken it before you realize you're moving. Language hides this truth in plain sight. We talk about starting over or beginning again, as if we could reset the clock. But even those phrases admit repetition. You can only begin again because you've begun before. The new start grows from the old one. The seed of it was already there, waiting for your attention. You can't create from nothing. You can only notice what's been forming quietly in the background. So when you ask if something can start, if it never truly began, you find yourself circling a strange space. Every start is part of something larger, and every end becomes a beginning for something else. There are no clean edges. The line between before and after is drawn by perception, not by time. What feels like the first step is just the moment you start paying attention to a motion that was already underway. The paradox of the beginning is that beginnings don't exist alone. They are simply points along a path with no true start, only awareness of movement that never really began. We are taught that light comes first and that shadows follow. It seems simple. A source of light shines, an object blocks it, and a shadow appears. But sometimes life reverses that order. The shadow shows you the shape of what's there before the light reveals it. The effect teaches you the cause. You notice the mark before the maker, the echo before the voice. It happens more often than we realize. Think about learning something new. You often feel confusion before understanding. The confusion isn't the absence of knowledge, it's the shadow of it. It's what happens when light is near but not yet clear. You feel its outline through frustration, through the sense that something important is hidden just beyond reach. Then once you finally understand, you look back and see how the confusion made space for clarity. The shadow created the conditions for the light. Pain works the same way. You might go through an experience that feels meaningless while it's happening. A loss, a failure, an ending. You search for reasons and find none. Only later, sometimes years later, do you see what that pain built inside you. Patience, empathy, or strength. The suffering was the shadow, and what it cast was light. The effect shaped the cause, not the other way around. The shadow didn't follow the light, it led it. In art, this reversal is everywhere. A painter adds depth to a scene not by using more light, but by using darkness. The shadows make the image real. Without them, everything looks flat. The artist begins with what seems to obscure and discovers that the shadow defines the form. The light depends on the dark to exist. The same is true in music. Silence gives meaning to sound. Without the pause between notes, the melody loses rhythm. The shadow creates the light's purpose. Relationships often reveal this paradox. You might meet someone who challenges you, who frustrates or unsettles you. At first, it feels like conflict, but later, you realize that person showed you something about yourself you couldn't have seen otherwise. The discomfort became a teacher. Their shadow brought your light forward. The cause and effect reverse. What you thought was resistance was actually revelation. Even history unfolds this way. Many social changes begin in the presence of injustice. A shadow, oppression, silence, inequality pushes people to act. The dark gives birth to movement, awareness, and reform. The shadow doesn't follow the light of justice, it provokes it. Without the wrong, the right might never emerge. It's not that the shadow is good, but that it becomes the shape that light must fill. The cause and effect move in a loop. You can see it in nature too. Forest fires destroy, yet the burned ground gives rise to new growth. Certain seeds only open through heat and ash. The destruction becomes the condition for renewal. The shadow, the fire, casts the light of new life. The same cycle happens in ecosystems, seasons, and weather. Night restores what the day wears out. The dark prepares the next dawn. In your own mind, cause and effect often blur. You might think you feel anxious because something bad happened, but sometimes it's the other way around. The feeling comes first, shaping how you see what happens next. A shadow in the mind can make light appear darker. Perspective changes the direction of causality. The story we tell about what caused what is often just our attempt to make order from patterns we don't yet understand. Memory can do this too. You might think a moment was meaningless when it occurred. Then, later, when life shifts, that same memory glows with new relevance. It feels as if the future reached back and gave the past its meaning. The light came after, but once it arrived, it illuminated what was already waiting in shadow. We experience time as a line, but sometimes it behaves like a circle. The effect completes the cause retroactively. Even in science, the lines blur. In physics, light behaves both as a particle and a wave, depending on how it's observed. The act of observation changes the result. In quantum experiments, particles seem to make choices after being measured, affecting what appears to have already happened. It's as if cause and effect trade places at the smallest scale of reality. The shadow doesn't just follow the light, it tells it where to go. In daily life, you can watch this play out in smaller moments. You might feel drawn to a new project, unsure why. It feels like something calling you forward. Only after finishing do you realize what it meant. The purpose arrives after the action, as if the effect reached backward to create the cause. You acted before you understood why. The light came second. The shadow of curiosity, vague, shapeless, but persistent, was what started it all. When people talk about self-discovery, they often focus on finding clarity, on seeing the light. But much of understanding comes from tracing shadows. You notice patterns of reaction, habits of thought, things that make you uncomfortable. Those shadows reveal structure, the edges of your own mind. To know yourself, you first meet what hides from you. The shadow sketches the outline before the light fills it in. Even language shows this reversal. A word only has meaning because of what it excludes. Up makes sense because down exists. Good exists because of bad. Every definition depends on its opposite. The shadow defines the light. Without one, the other collapses. You can't describe purity without knowing stain. The contrast is what gives shape to sense. In stories, heroes often emerge from their flaws, not their strengths. A character's weakness becomes the path to their growth. The shadow part of them, the pride, the fear, the doubt, drives the plot. It forces choices that reveal who they are. The light at the end of the story only makes sense because of the darkness that came before. The cause and effect twist together until they're inseparable. When cause and effect trade places, you start to see the world less as a chain of events and more as a conversation. The shadow speaks first, and the light answers. The two are bound, not opposed. What we think of as progress often begins in uncertainty. What we call clarity often starts in confusion. The light doesn't erase the shadow, it listens to it. And in that exchange, both find their form. Sometimes you wake in the middle of a dream and feel like the dream is still happening somewhere nearby. The story keeps moving without you. You can sense it fading, but not ending. It's as if imagination remains awake for a few moments after you've opened your eyes. You lie there trying to hold on to it, but the details slip away. The faces blur, the rooms melt, and what remains is the feeling, the residue of something that felt real but belonged to another kind of world. That's what it means for dreams to remember themselves. They go on thinking long after you've stopped paying attention. Dreams work like reflections of the waking mind. They gather fragments of your days, conversations, worries, flashes of memory, and turn them into stories you never meant to write. The strange part is how coherent they sometimes seem while you're in them. You accept impossible things, walking through walls, speaking to people who are gone, watching time fold in on itself. In that state, imagination leads and logic follows. The dream builds itself, then pauses, watching you live inside it. Scientists have studied this for decades, trying to explain what dreams do. Some say they're the brain's way of organizing memory. Others think they're random images that make sense only because you're wired to find patterns. But the truth feels more complicated. Dreams behave like living things. They adapt, respond, and sometimes even argue back. You can have a nightmare that softens when you face it, or a pleasant dream that shifts the moment you notice it's not real. The dream seems aware of you, even though you're the one making it. There's a common experience people describe when they wake from a dream and feel a deep emotion, fear, love, grief, that doesn't match the dream's story. It's as if the emotion existed first, and the dream built itself around it. The story was only a vessel. When you wake, the emotion lingers while the story fades. The imagination has done its work, translating feeling into image, then stepping aside. What's left is the echo. The dream remembers itself through you. Sometimes dreams solve problems before the waking mind does. A scientist might struggle with a question for weeks, then wake one morning with the answer, as if it arrived overnight. The chemist August Kekulé famously saw the shape of the benzene molecule in a dream of a snake biting its own tail. The dream didn't hand him a diagram. It offered an image that bridged logic and intuition. Imagination worked while he slept, remembering the question when he couldn't. The mind never truly stops thinking. It only changes form. Art has always drawn from this space between sleep and waking. Painters like Salvador Dali and writers like Mary Shelley turned dreams into reality. Shelley's vision of Frankenstein came to her in a dream, a scientist bending over a creature brought to life. Dali tried to catch ideas that appeared in the seconds between sleep and wakefulness, holding a spoon in his hand so the sound of it dropping would wake him before the dream vanished. Both understood that imagination often wakes before we do. It moves first, while reason lags behind, trying to interpret what just happened. Children live closer to this state. They drift between imagination and waking thought without noticing a difference. A child might say, "I dreamed I was a bird," and mean it not as fantasy, but as memory. To them, the dream feels as real as the morning. Adults lose that openness. We separate the two worlds, one called real, one called imagined, and spend the rest of our lives trying to bridge them again through art, reflection, or faith. The The dream doesn't stop remembering itself. We simply stop listening. You might notice this when you wake from a dream that seems familiar, as if you've had it before. The places repeat, the people reappear, the mood returns. These recurring dreams act like memory loops. They suggest that part of you keeps visiting the same space, revising it slightly each time. Psychologists call them unresolved narratives, your mind trying to complete a story it never finished. But maybe it's something quieter, imagination testing itself, returning to old terrain to see what's changed. Dreams remember not just themselves, but you, the version of you that keeps walking those same corridors, still searching for a door. Even nightmares show this. You might dream of falling, of being chased, of losing control. The fear feels absolute until you wake and realize you've had this dream before. The story is the same, but the setting changes. It's not random repetition, it's rehearsal. The dream is memory in motion, learning how to let go of fear by replaying it. When you finally stop running and face what chases you, the dream often changes or ends. The shadow remembers the light that shaped it. The moments right before waking are where imagination feels most alive. The edges between dreaming and consciousness blur. You might hear a voice call your name, or see a flash of light, or feel movement that isn't there. For a few seconds, you live in both worlds at once. Artists and mystics have long tried to stay in that state, believing it holds access to a deeper kind of awareness. They call it the hypnagogic state, the mind half asleep, half awake. It's where imagination and reason overlap. It's where dreams whisper to you before dissolving. Even when you're fully awake, fragments of dreams stay with you. You might walk into a room and feel a strange familiarity, as if you've been there before, or meet someone new and feel you've known them for years. These moments feel unreal, but carry a quiet recognition. They could be coincidences, or they could be dreams remembering themselves through you. Maybe imagination leaves fingerprints that reappear later, guiding small pieces of your day. Language shows traces of this too. We use the word dream to describe hope, ambition, or desire. We say, follow your dream or live the dream. The same word that once meant the private theater of sleep now describes the public theater of purpose. The boundary between dreaming and doing isn't as sharp as it seems. The mind that creates dreams at night is the same one that imagines futures during the day. In both cases, imagination wakes first and reality follows. You can notice this in quiet moments, when a thought drifts through your mind without invitation, or when an image appears before you can explain it. These are flashes of the dreaming mind working in daylight. They remind you that imagination doesn't sleep. It keeps moving underneath everything you do, remembering what it made in the dark. It watches through the cracks of consciousness, waiting for you to notice. Dreams remembering themselves are not about mystery alone. They show that imagination has its own memory, independent of reason. It keeps writing even when you stop paying attention. When you wake in the morning with a feeling you can't name, that's the dream still thinking. It's imagination awake before you, whispering what it already knows, that the world of night and the world of day are not separate at all, but two sides of the same waking thought. Sometimes truth doesn't hide behind layers of secrecy. It hides in plain sight. It stands right in front of you, fully visible, but dressed in a form you don't expect. You overlook it because it doesn't look the way truth is supposed to look. It seems ordinary, or even misleading. You keep searching for a deeper meaning, while the answer quietly waits in the open. That's the strange nature of truth in disguise. It reveals itself by pretending to be something else. Think about the old riddle. What gets wetter the more it dries? The answer, a towel, feels almost too simple once you hear it. The question didn't conceal the answer. It described it exactly. You were just looking for something more clever, something more complex. That's how life often works. The truth fits the situation so perfectly that the mind skips over it. We assume anything obvious must be wrong. We expect mystery, so we miss the plain fact that the solution has already shown itself. In conversation, this happens all the time. Someone might say, "I'm fine," when they clearly aren't. You hear the words and believe them because they sound complete. But the truth sits underneath, built into the tone, the silence, the pause. You can sense the truth if you stop listening only to what's said and pay attention to how it's said. The disguise isn't a lie, it's protection. Sometimes people show truth by hiding it behind what's acceptable to say out loud. Art plays with this constantly. A painting or poem can tell the truth by bending it. A surreal image might show something truer than a photograph because it reveals how things feel, not just how they look. Picasso once said that art is a lie that makes us realize the truth. The disguise isn't meant to deceive. It's a tool that allows us to see what direct explanation can't. The truth needs a mask to become visible. In relationships, truth often hides this way. You may think a friend has changed or become distant, but when you look closer, you find the same pattern of care expressed differently. The disguise is growth. You think you've lost connection, when in fact it's evolving. The same happens in love. You might assume a relationship is ending because it no longer feels the way it did at the beginning. But that feeling, the uncertainty, the quietness, might be the truth of love settling into its real form. The surface has changed, but the substance remains. History offers countless examples of truth hiding in plain view. For centuries, people thought the Earth was the center of the universe. The sun appeared to rise and set each day. That was what everyone could see. The truth, Earth orbiting the sun, was visible too, but it required looking differently. The disguise was perspective. What seemed self-evident wasn't false. It was incomplete. The truth didn't arrive from outside. It was there all along, waiting for someone to notice what the motion really meant. Even in science, the most elegant discoveries are often the simplest. When Newton watched an apple fall, the truth of gravity wasn't hidden underground. It was falling in front of him, over and over. The world had shown the answer forever, but no one had asked the right question. The disguise was familiarity. People stop questioning what they see every day. Familiarity covers truth more effectively than secrecy ever could. The same dynamic exists in everyday problems. Imagine someone who keeps changing jobs, believing they're searching for purpose. Each new workplace feels wrong in a different way. They assume the problem is external, the company, the people, the tasks. But the real issue is internal. The truth is that they don't yet know what they want. The pattern itself reveals the answer. The disguise is motion. The truth is stillness. Once they see that, the search changes direction. In communication, truth sometimes hides inside contradiction. You might hear someone say, "I don't care," but watch their actions tell the opposite story. The words are the disguise. The behavior is the truth. This is why actions reveal more than explanations. People often show their truth without realizing it, and those who look closely can see it. The challenge is that we often prefer to believe the disguise. It's easier, cleaner, and less demanding than confronting what's real. Language itself disguises truth. Words are symbols, not the things they describe. When someone says time, the sound of the word doesn't carry the experience of it. It's a label, not the reality. We live surrounded by these symbols and forget they're only approximations. Sometimes the truth hides behind the habit of naming. We think we understand something because we have a word for it, but the name can obscure the living thing beneath it. Dreams use this principle naturally. They show truth through symbols: water for emotion, flight for freedom, falling for loss of control. When you wake, the images might seem strange, even nonsensical, but they often describe what your waking mind avoids. The disguise allows honesty. The dream tells you something you already know, but couldn't face directly. The truth arrives dressed as fiction, so you can accept it. You can see this in memory too. Over time, memories reshape themselves. Details blur, and what remains is feeling. You might think you've forgotten, but the emotion still carries the truth of what happened. The disguise is nostalgia. The mind softens sharp edges to make the past bearable. Beneath that softness, the truth endures, quiet, unchanged, waiting. Sometimes the truth disguises itself because you're not ready for it. You might ignore warning signs or dismiss intuition because facing them would force change. Later, when things fall apart, you look back and see the truth was there the whole time. It wasn't hiding, it was waiting. The disguise was your own unwillingness to see. We call that hindsight, but it's really recognition delayed by comfort. In another sense, disguise protects truth. When an idea is too large to hold directly, it takes a smaller form. Myths and parables exist for that reason. They let truth speak in a way people can hear. A story about a flood isn't only about water. It's about cleansing, renewal, and fear. The surface conceals depth, not to trick you, but to prepare you. The disguise invites discovery. The act of finding the truth makes it yours. What makes truth powerful is that it can survive the disguise. You can look at a lie, a metaphor, a shadow, and still sense what's real underneath. It's why people often say, "I don't know how I knew, I just did." Recognition doesn't always come from logic. Sometimes it's the quiet moment when the pieces line up and you realize the answer has been visible all along. The puzzle was showing you the solution from the start. You just had to see it as more than a trick. Truth doesn't hide to stay hidden. It hides to teach you how to see. Identity often feels like something solid, something you can name and hold. You tell yourself, "This is who I am," as if it's a point you can draw on a map. But when you look closer, it moves. It changes shape depending on where you stand, what day it is, or who's asking. You circle around it, thinking you'll find a center, only to realize the circle itself keeps shifting. The self becomes a loop without an anchor, a circle that forgot its center. You can see this early in life. A child learns who they are through repetition. People say, "You're funny, you're shy, you're smart." The child repeats those words, trying them on until they fit. But as time passes, the meanings change. The funny child grows quieter. The shy one learns confidence. Each version of self feels true at the time. The problem is that none of them stay fixed. The identity that once felt solid dissolves, and the search begins again. Adults experience this too. You might say, "I know who I am," based on your work, your relationships, or your beliefs. But what happens when one of those changes? You lose the job, the relationship ends, or your faith shifts. The pieces that defined you fall apart, and you start to wonder if they ever were you at all. You look for something constant inside the motion, a point that doesn't move. But the more you search, the more it hides. Think of a wheel spinning. The edge moves fast, while the center seems still. But even the center depends on the motion around it to exist. Without rotation, there's no wheel. Identity works in the same way. What feels still inside you, the sense of I, depends on everything that changes. You know who you are only through contrast, by remembering who you were yesterday, or by imagining who you might be tomorrow. The self exists as motion pretending to be stillness. People often try to fix identity through roles. You might define yourself as a parent, a friend, an artist, or a leader. These roles give structure and meaning, but they're not permanent. They're like masks you wear at different moments. The danger comes when you mistake the mask for the face. When one role fades, it feels like losing yourself. But maybe what's being lost isn't identity, it's attachment to one version of it. Social life complicates this even more. Others reflect versions of you that you start to believe. Around some people, you're careful and quiet. Around others, you're open and spontaneous. None of these are false, but none are the whole truth either. You're not one identity, but many overlapping reflections. The circle of self bends toward whoever you stand near. It's flexible by design. The center remains unmarked because it's always in motion. Memory deepens the illusion of continuity. You remember past experiences and assume they belong to the same you, who exists now. But memory edits itself. It keeps the parts that make sense and reshapes the rest. The person you remember isn't the same as the one remembering. Each recollection reinforces the idea of a stable identity, but it's a story told in the present tense. The self you recall is already gone. Even language supports this illusion. We use I as if it refers to a fixed thing, but it's more like a placeholder. When you say, I am tired or I am hopeful, the I is different each time. The words make it sound permanent, but the experience changes moment by moment. The circle keeps moving while the word stays the same. The simplicity of language hides the complexity of being. Philosophy has wrestled with this for centuries. Some traditions say there is no enduring self, only a flow of perceptions and experiences. Others argue for a soul, something stable behind the change. But even if there were a soul, it would still be defined by its expression in time. The question becomes less about what you are and more about how you keep becoming. The center might not be lost. It might never have existed. You can feel this when you change environments, travel to another country, move to a new city, or start a new community, and you notice how quickly your sense of self shifts. You behave differently, think differently, even feel different kinds of confidence. The circle redraws itself in response to context. Identity is adaptive, not absolute. The center adjusts to each new shape until the illusion of stability returns. Technology mirrors this fluidity. Online, you build profiles that present parts of yourself, your opinions, images, or achievements. Each platform becomes a mirror, showing a slightly altered version. You start curating identity like design work, editing and presenting pieces of self that fit different audiences. Over time, those versions blend into the real you, even though none of them tell the full story. The self online and the self in private overlap but never merge. The circle keeps spinning, but the center fades into pixels. Sometimes identity loops through contradictions. You might pride yourself on being independent, but also crave connection. You might value honesty, yet hide parts of yourself to be accepted. These opposites don't cancel each other. They define each other. The circle contains both. When one side dominates, the other hides in the shadow, waiting to return. The struggle isn't between truth and falsehood, but between two truths fighting for balance. Even emotions reveal how identity moves. You can feel confident in one moment and uncertain in the next. You can love and resent the same person within a single day. The self that feels one way disappears into the self that feels another, yet you still call both me. The circle loops endlessly, each feeling passing through, each one shaping the next. The center doesn't hold because it was never meant to. Art and writing often come from this motion. Creators describe their work as finding themselves or losing themselves, sometimes in the same breath. When you make something, you step outside the old version of you. The process becomes a mirror that doesn't reflect, it transforms. The artist finishes a work and no longer feels like the same person who began it. The act of creation changes the one who creates. The circle that forgot its center is not broken. It's simply what happens when self-awareness becomes part of the pattern. You notice the movement and try to find where it begins, but every time you point to a center, it moves with you. You can't step outside of it to look in. You are both the circle and the motion that draws it. The search for the point only reminds you that you were never standing still. The human mind loves order. It tries to fit the world into patterns that make sense. It builds systems of logic, lines of reasoning, and neat explanations that tie things together. Most of the time, this works. Logic helps us survive. It helps us make sense of cause and effect, choice and consequence. But sometimes, reason creates illusions so convincing they look like truth. The structure holds perfectly even when the foundation isn't real. That's the logic of illusion, when thinking itself becomes the trick. You can see this clearly in visual illusions. Look at two lines of the same length, where one has arrows pointing inward and the other outward. The one with outward arrows looks longer, though it's not. Your brain knows the measurements, yet your eyes still disagree. Logic tells you what's true, but perception insists otherwise. The illusion is not a failure of reason. It's reason doing exactly what it was designed to do: interpret patterns. The mind fills gaps and imposes structure because it's built to find order, even when none exists. The same thing happens in thought. You can form a belief based on a pattern that feels right. You connect events, ideas, or emotions and build a story that explains them. The story makes perfect sense. It feels rational. But later, when new facts appear, the logic collapses. You realize you built a system around a false assumption. The reasoning was sound. The premise was wrong. That's the trick of logic. It can be flawless and still lead you in the wrong direction. Confirmation bias works this way. Once you believe something, your mind starts collecting evidence that supports it. It filters out what doesn't fit. The pattern strengthens, and the illusion grows more convincing. You might think you're being logical, but you're only reinforcing the loop. The structure feels solid because each piece supports the next, yet the whole thing floats on belief, not truth. The illusion stands because reason keeps it standing. Philosophy is full of examples where logic turns back on itself. Take Zeno's paradox. To reach a destination, you must first travel halfway there, then halfway again, and again, infinitely. By logic, you can never arrive, yet you do. The reasoning is clean, but it leads to contradiction. The paradox shows that even perfect logic can mislead when it meets reality. The illusion isn't a flaw, it's a property of the system. The argument holds, but the world refuses to obey it. In daily life, logic and illusion often blend without notice. You might think, if I work harder, I'll be happy. The reasoning seems sound. Effort leads to success. Success leads to happiness. You follow it, and for a while, it works. You achieve more, but the happiness fades. The pattern feels broken, so you double down, thinking the cause needs more intensity. The illusion persists because the logic is intact. You don't question the premise that happiness might not depend on achievement. The reasoning works only because it stays inside the illusion's frame. Advertising depends on this structure. It builds emotional logic that looks rational. You see an image of someone using a product, smiling, fulfilled. The message is clear but unspoken. If you buy this, you'll feel the same. Your brain connects the dots, and the logic completes itself. It's not deception in the usual sense. It's precision. The illusion works because it follows the form of reason, not because it ignores it. The conclusion feels earned, though it never was. Memory also plays tricks of logic. You recall events and believe they happened a certain way. The mind fills in missing details, so the story feels whole. It uses reasoning to make experience consistent. Later, when someone remembers it differently, you both argue from solid ground. Each memory follows a perfect internal logic, but one or both are wrong. The illusion lies not in the error, but in how convincing the structure feels. Science, for all its rigor, isn't immune. Paradigms, broad systems of thought, often last because they explain the data well. But when new evidence appears that doesn't fit, scientists face the same challenge anyone does: deciding whether to adjust the theory or question the foundation. The history of science is a series of illusions breaking down as better ones replace them. Each time, logic was right inside its limits, wrong beyond them. Even emotion follows logical illusions. Someone might believe they're unworthy of love. Every small rejection, every silence becomes proof. The reasoning tightens until it feels absolute. He believed because I'm not enough. The logic fits the evidence because the evidence has been filtered. The illusion is painful, but it's internally perfect. To escape it, you don't argue with the logic, you step outside of it. You question the premise that gave it power. You can see this in culture too. Societies create shared illusions, systems of meaning that feel natural. Money, for example, works only because people believe in its value. The logic is airtight. Currency represents worth, and everyone agrees to treat it that way. But remove the agreement, and the logic vanishes. The illusion is functional, even beautiful in its efficiency. It holds reality together by consensus. The logic of illusion also appears in personal identity. You tell yourself a story about who you are: strong, kind, unlucky, misunderstood, and then collect proof to match it. You explain your past, justify your choices, and predict your future through that frame. Reasoning becomes so complete that it feels like fact. Yet when something contradicts it, when you act out of character, when life changes, the illusion cracks. You realize the logic was your own creation, not truth. This doesn't mean logic is the enemy. The mind needs structure to navigate the world, but structure alone can't guarantee truth. The problem isn't that reasoning fails, it's that it can succeed too well. It can create perfect patterns out of incomplete data. It can build a map so precise that you forget it isn't the territory. The illusion isn't chaos, it's order mistaken for reality. The next time something seems perfectly reasonable, it's worth pausing. Ask where the reasoning starts, not just where it leads. Many illusions begin with small assumptions that no one thought to test. The trick works because it uses your own logic against you. That's what makes it powerful. It doesn't hide in confusion, it hides in clarity. The lines line up, the math adds, and everything fits. Only later do you realize that the perfect form was the disguise, that reason itself, in its brilliance, was playing the most elegant trick of all. Before any word is spoken, there is silence. It comes first unnoticed, like a breath drawn before speech. Most people think silence is the absence of communication, but it isn't. Silence often says what words cannot. It carries tension, comfort, and meaning that language only echoes. In conversations, relationships, and even within our own thoughts, silence speaks first. It frames what follows and decides what can be heard. Think about two people sitting together after an argument. No one talks. The air feels heavy, yet full. The silence isn't empty, it's charged. It says everything that both are afraid to. It speaks of hurt, of pride, of the space between them. When one finally speaks, the words are shaped by that quiet. The silence asked the first question, "What will you do with this distance?" The words are only the attempt to answer. In a classroom, a teacher pauses after asking a difficult question. The pause stretches. At first, students shift in their seats, waiting for someone else to fill the space. But in that silence, thinking begins. The mind starts to move. The pause isn't a void, it's an invitation. The question lives inside it. When a student finally answers, the silence has already done half the teaching. Music depends on this principle. A note gains power because of what comes before and after, the rest. The held breath between sounds. A song without silence would be noise. Composers understand that pauses aren't interruptions, they are part of the rhythm. The first beat of silence gives the listener time to feel expectation. The sound that follows becomes meaningful only because the silence prepared it. In this way, silence speaks before the music begins. You can see it in how people listen. When someone truly listens, they hold silence as if it's fragile. They don't rush to fill it. They let the other person's words expand into it. That quiet attention says, "I'm here, I'm with you." No sentence can express that better. The silence itself becomes a kind of presence. It carries care, understanding, and respect without needing sound to confirm it. There's another kind of silence, the one that hides truth. In a family, a secret can live for years inside quietness. No one mentions it, but everyone knows it's there. The silence becomes its own language, full of things unsaid but understood. When someone finally speaks the truth, the silence breaks, but it was already speaking long before. It held the question, how long will we pretend not to know? Nature speaks in this same way. Stand in a forest after rain. There's a stillness between the sounds of dripping water and wind. That silence isn't absence, it's balance. It tells you the world is breathing. You feel calm, not because nothing is happening, but because everything is. The silence reminds you of scale, of how small speech is compared to the world's quiet pulse. In conversation, silence can reveal intention more than words. A pause before answering can mean hesitation, thought, or fear. A long silence can express disappointment without anger. In negotiations, silence can apply pressure. The first person to speak after a pause often gives away their position. The riddle is that the silence asked the question. It demanded, "What do you really mean?" And the answer appeared only when someone rushed to fill it. Writers understand the same logic. On a page, white space shapes meaning. The paragraph break, the line ending, the pause between sentences. These silences control rhythm and emotion. The reader feels their weight without noticing. Even a story that begins in action starts with the silence of the blank page. Before words appear, the page waits. The silence asks, "What will you say?" Sometimes silence is protection. In moments of grief, words can harm more than help. When someone loses a loved one, the best comfort may come from simply sitting beside them without speaking. The silence tells them they aren't alone. Words can't fix loss, but silence can hold it. It allows space for sorrow to breathe, for pain to exist without needing translation. That kind of silence is not emptiness, it's shelter. There's also silence that feels uncomfortable. In a crowded elevator, no one talks. The quiet hum of machinery fills the air. Each person stares ahead, pretending not to notice the others. The silence feels tight, awkward, but it still communicates. It says, "We are strangers, sharing space." The tension comes from awareness without acknowledgement. Even unwanted silence still speaks. It names what we can't bring ourselves to say aloud. Technology has changed our relationship with silence. We fill every gap with sound, music in our ears, podcasts on commutes, voices on screens. The absence of noise now feels strange, even threatening. But when silence disappears, reflection goes with it. The constant stream of words leaves no room for the mind to ask its own questions. Silence is where thoughts form before they become speech. Without it, we respond more than we reflect. In relationships, silence can mark turning points. There's the silence after someone says something that can't be taken back, and the silence that follows forgiveness. Both sound the same, but mean opposite things. One holds distance, the other holds peace. The difference lies in what the silence contains: fear or acceptance. Words might never clarify it, but both people know. Silence carries that kind of knowledge quietly, without proof. Even in yourself, silence has meaning. Sit alone without distraction, and thoughts begin to surface. Some are memories, others worries, but underneath them all lies another kind of silence, the one that listens back. It's not the absence of thought, but the awareness that you are thinking. That stillness can be unsettling at first because it doesn't answer. It only observes. But it's in that space that understanding begins. Spiritual traditions often start with silence. Monks meditate in quiet rooms. Pilgrims walk long distances without speaking. Prayer often begins with stillness before words. The purpose isn't to escape the world, but to hear it more clearly. When everything else fades, silence speaks the truth that noise hides. It asks, "Who are you when you're not talking?" That question doesn't need sound, it needs attention. Silence also lives inside language itself. Every word depends on pauses to separate it from the next. Without silence, meaning collapses into chaos. The spaces between words make speech possible. Even the loudest declaration rides on the back of quiet. When someone says something profound, we often respond with silence, not applause. It's instinct. The silence acknowledges what words can't match. A silence that speaks first isn't passive. It's active presence, shaping what comes after. It asks questions without asking, teaches without explaining, and reveals what's hidden beneath the noise. You notice it most when it's gone, when life becomes so loud that nothing can be heard between moments. Yet silence is always there, waiting for us to stop talking long enough to listen. It speaks first, and if we're patient, we might finally learn how to hear what it's been saying all along. Sometimes you hear something that feels familiar even though you're sure it was never spoken. A phrase forms in your mind, or a thought appears that sounds like someone else's voice. It feels like an echo, but when you trace it back, there's no source. It doesn't belong to anyone. These are echoes without origin, sounds of memory, culture, or imagination that repeat through us even when no one started them. Language itself is full of them. Words and expressions travel through generations, losing track of who said them first. You might repeat a saying your parents used, only to learn they heard it from their parents. The phrase feels natural, like it belongs to you, but it's inherited. Time heals all wounds. Everything happens for a reason. They pass through mouths and centuries until they become self-sustaining. The original speaker disappears, but the echo continues. The voice that once created it is gone. Yet it still speaks. The same thing happens in thought. You might believe an idea is your own, but it often comes from something you read, heard, or saw long ago. It returns later, stripped of its origin, dressed in your own phrasing. You think you've discovered it, but you've only heard the echo. Every opinion, belief, or judgment carries traces of other voices. Culture speaks through us, not around us. The illusion of originality is often just the mind forgetting its sources. Social media amplifies this. Someone posts a thought, and it's shared thousands of times. The words shift slightly each time, adapted to tone or context. Soon, no one remembers who wrote them first. The statement exists as a floating truth, detached from origin. You see it quoted, memed, or repeated in arguments until it becomes common sense. The echo becomes the sound. The voice that began it is irrelevant. The message survives by forgetting where it came from. In music, echoes create depth. A singer's voice repeats itself, overlapping until you can't tell where the first note ends and the next begins. The repetition gives the illusion of space, as if the sound comes from somewhere beyond. The same thing happens in thought and communication. The more something is repeated, the more real it feels. Familiarity stands in for truth. The echo replaces the origin as the thing we trust. Memory plays its own part in this. You might remember a story from childhood, but details shift over time. You tell it again, changing a few words. The story still feels true, but it's no longer the same. Others hear it, repeat it, and it grows. Eventually, the story belongs to no one. It has a life of its own. Families often share these echoes, a relative's phrase, a recurring joke, a myth about how something happened. The origin fades, and what remains is rhythm, a pattern of speech that carries the shape of memory even after the content changes. Sometimes echoes without origin aren't words at all. They're habits, reactions, or fears that pass through generations. A child might grow up avoiding conflict because their parents did, not knowing the reason. The behavior becomes an unspoken inheritance. The echo moves through action instead of sound. You can feel it, but not name it. It lives in how people move, how they pause, how they hold silence. These echoes shape lives without ever being consciously taught. Philosophy calls this the problem of influence, how ideas spread without clear authorship. Thinkers across history repeat the same questions under new forms. What is truth? What is good? What is self? Each time, the phrasing changes, but the core remains. It's not theft, it's resonance. The human mind echoes what it cannot stop asking. Even the most original insight often carries a faint repetition of something ancient. In dreams, this becomes literal. You might hear voices saying things you've never thought before. They sound distinct, with tone and personality, yet you know they come from within. The mind generates echoes, inventing speakers to match them. It's a strange trick of consciousness. Your brain creates meaning and then pretends to receive it. The echo precedes the origin. You feel like you're remembering something that hasn't been said yet. In everyday life, rumors spread the same way. A small comment becomes a fact once repeated enough times. They said this, or everyone knows that. But when you ask who they are, the trail ends. The echo has replaced the source. It doesn't need a voice anymore. It carries its own authority. People believe what sounds like something they've heard before. Familiarity feels safe. The mind mistakes repetition for proof. You can see it in history too. Legends and myths often start with fragments, half-remembered events or symbols. Over time, they gain structure, names, and detail. A story that began as a metaphor becomes treated as fact. The echo becomes scripture. Each generation repeats the version that suits its needs, unaware of the earlier versions. The origin disappears beneath layers of repetition. Yet the story feels timeless because no single person owns it. Technology adds new layers to this echo. Artificial intelligence, recording devices, and digital archives preserve voices beyond their time. You can hear a singer long dead, their voice restored, cleaned, and looped. The sound exists now without the body that produced it. The voice has outlived its origin. In a way, this is what all communication does. It tries to leave behind something that speaks when the speaker no longer can. But when the echo becomes perfect, it raises the question, does the voice still need to exist at all? Even emotions can echo. You might feel sadness that doesn't belong to you, something inherited from a family's history or absorbed from the collective mood of the world. You can't name where it began, but it moves through you. Art often taps into this, expressing feelings that belong to everyone and no one. A poem, a film, a melody, all carry echoes of human experience that never had a single voice. They repeat what was never said aloud. In a quiet room, you can hear this in yourself. Thoughts rise that feel foreign, yet they sound like you. Sometimes they're fragments of something you once heard. Sometimes they're the shape of emotion without language. They pass through, leaving traces. You might even speak them and not realize you're repeating something that never truly belonged to you. Identity, too, is built from these repetitions. The self is an accumulation of echoes, voices internalized, rearranged, mistaken for the original. When you listen closely, the world is full of these repeating voices. They come from art, memory, culture, and thought, weaving together until they sound like a single hum. You can't find where it started, and maybe that's the point. Some truths don't need an origin to exist. They live in repetition itself, in the way sound travels through space long after the speaker is gone. The echo keeps moving, carrying something that no one said, yet everyone somehow remembers. A map is meant to simplify. It shows what matters and leaves out the rest. Mountains become lines, rivers become threads, and cities become dots. The map is smaller than the world so that it can be useful. But sometimes understanding reverses that. Sometimes the explanation grows so detailed, so layered, that it becomes larger than the thing it was meant to describe. What started as a guide becomes a labyrinth. The attempt to clarify ends in complexity. You can see this in how people try to explain themselves. Someone might say, "I just want to understand who I am." They collect experiences, labels, and theories, building a kind of personal map. Personality tests, memories, reflections, all form a structure meant to represent the self. But as the search deepens, the map expands. They begin to see not one self, but many. They trace motives behind motives, histories within histories. The explanation becomes so intricate that it starts to overshadow the life it's meant to describe. They know more about who they think they are than about how it feels to simply be. The map grows larger than the world it was drawn from. Knowledge works the same way. A field of study begins with a clear goal: to understand a phenomenon, a pattern, a question. Over time, the theories multiply. Subfields appear, then subfields of subfields. Each layer tries to make the picture sharper. But at some point, the understanding becomes more complex than the thing itself. The model no longer mirrors reality. It builds a version of reality that only exists inside the system. The map stops being a tool and starts being a place. Experts can get lost inside it, arguing about symbols while forgetting what the symbols once stood for. Technology often accelerates this. Data collection promises accuracy. The more data, the closer to truth, or so it seems. But too much detail can break the pattern it was meant to reveal. When you record everything, meaning gets buried. The forest disappears beneath the pixels of every tree. The system becomes self-referential, explaining itself instead of what it represents. The map grows vast, but the world doesn't change. The expansion of information creates the illusion of clarity while multiplying confusion. You can feel this in modern life. The tools meant to simplify have become their own terrain. Navigation apps tell us where to go, but people still get lost because they stop looking at the world itself. They follow the map's logic instead of their own senses. The device says, "Turn left," and so they do, even if the street sign disagrees. The map's authority outweighs reality. Understanding, the designed convenience, has outgrown experience. The same thing happens in memory. The stories you tell about your past become versions of it. You edit, arrange, and explain events until the story feels coherent. But each retelling adds another layer. Eventually, the memory becomes so organized that it no longer resembles what happened. It's truer to the story than to the experience. The map of your life becomes more familiar than the life itself. You start to live inside the narrative instead of the moment. Philosophy has long warned about this. A philosopher, Alfred Korzybski, wrote, "The map is not the territory. It's a reminder that representation can never equal reality. But humans like order more than uncertainty. We prefer the neat lines of understanding to the chaos of experience. We forget that models are tools, not truths. A map larger than the world feels safer because it promises total comprehension. But total comprehension is another name for illusion. The world doesn't fit inside explanation. It keeps growing while the map tries to contain it. You can see this tension in art too. Some artists chase perfection, layering detail until every brushstroke is exact. But sometimes the painting loses life in the process. The sketch that once breathed with energy becomes overworked, controlled by precision instead of feeling. The artist mapped the subject too completely. The more they understood it, the less alive it became. The work stopped representing the world and began representing the effort to understand it. In relationships, the same principle quietly unfolds. People analyze every word and gesture, trying to understand what the other person means. They build mental maps of the relationship, expectations, patterns, histories. The analysis becomes the relationship. They stop listening and start interpreting. They no longer see the person, only their model of the person. The understanding grows so large, it replaces reality. The map speaks louder than the world it once described. Even emotion follows this logic. When you name a feeling, grief, love, fear, you start to explain it. But if you analyze it too long, the naming becomes distance. The feeling turns into a subject of study rather than an experience to inhabit. You end up describing the storm from inside a shelter, safe but disconnected. The words are the map, and they've expanded to fill the whole view. The rain still falls, but you can't feel it anymore. Science fiction often imagines literal versions of this paradox. Worlds built inside simulations, virtual realities more complex than the physical one. The creators lose track of which is real. But that idea isn't only futuristic. Every time our models of the world, social, scientific, or personal, become more convincing than the world itself, we're already living in that story. A simulation is our understanding. The illusion grows from logic, not magic. It's easy to confuse depth with clarity. To understand more feels like progress, but sometimes it's accumulation without direction. You can study a river until you know every chemical and current, but you might forget how it sounds. The truth of the river isn't in the data, it's in the flow. The map of it can be perfect, but the map won't move. When understanding outgrows what it describes, knowledge loses touch with what it was meant to serve. The lines on the paper stretch until they cover everything, and yet somehow there's less to see. Most people fear doubt. They treat it like a sign of weakness, something to be solved or pushed away. But doubt isn't the enemy of truth. It's what keeps truth honest. It's the pause between assumption and understanding, the space where you stop and check if what you believe still holds. Doubt doesn't destroy certainty, it refines it. In a world full of easy answers and strong opinions, doubt remains the only reliable measure of thought. Think about how children learn. They ask questions constantly. Why is the sky blue? Why do people die? Why can't I see time? Their curiosity isn't fueled by knowledge, but by doubt, the sense that things might not be what they seem. They live inside that uncertainty without fear. As they grow, adults teach them to stop asking so much, to accept facts, to settle into stable explanations. But something valuable is lost when the habit of questioning fades. The certainty that replaces it often feels safe, but it's built on stillness. Doubt is motion. It keeps the mind alive. Science depends on this. Every discovery begins with someone saying, "What if this isn't true?" Newton's laws stood for centuries until Einstein doubted them. Even now, physicists question Einstein. The process never ends because every answer creates new uncertainties. Scientists don't seek final truth, they seek better approximations. Certainty lies not in the conclusions, but in the method, the discipline of doubt. It's the one rule that doesn't change. No theory is beyond question. In daily life, people use the opposite rule. They cling to what feels right and reject what doesn't. Someone reads a headline, feels agreement, and stops there. Doubt would slow them down, so they avoid it. But when you refuse to question your own ideas, you stop thinking, you start repeating. Doubt doesn't paralyze the mind. It clears space for clarity. The moment you admit, "I might be wrong," you open the door to learning. History shows the danger of certainty without doubt. Entire societies have built their foundations on unquestioned beliefs, religious, political, or cultural, and guarded them as absolute truths. When challenged, those systems collapse under their own rigidity. The people inside them aren't foolish, they're human. Certainty feels comfortable. It creates order in chaos. But when that order becomes sacred, it blinds. Doubt is what keeps systems flexible. It bends before the break. You can see the same principle in relationships. When people argue, they often defend their point instead of listening. Each side wants to be right, but certainty can close the ear faster than anger. Doubt, real open doubt, changes the shape of dialogue. If you can say, "Maybe I'm missing something," the other person becomes less of an opponent and more of a mirror. Doubt invites empathy. It doesn't weaken conviction, it strengthens understanding. Even creativity grows from doubt. An artist begins with a blank canvas and no guarantee of success. Every line is an experiment. The moment the artist feels certain, the work dies. Music, writing, painting, all rely on not knowing exactly what comes next. The uncertainty drives discovery. Doubt keeps art alive by forcing the creator to listen, to the work, to the moment, to what hasn't yet taken form. Doubt also has a moral dimension. It stops conviction from turning into cruelty. History's worst actions were done in the name of certainty. People convinced they were absolutely right. Doubt would have slowed them, forced them to ask questions they ignored. What if I'm mistaken? What if this harm isn't justified? The absence of doubt allows harm to grow under the illusion of righteousness. Doubt doesn't make you indecisive. It makes you responsible. In the mind, doubt is not chaos. It's a form of order. It's the mechanism that keeps thoughts from hardening into dogma. You can believe something and still question it. Faith, knowledge, and even love survive doubt not by avoiding it, but by passing through it. If a belief collapses when you doubt it, it was never strong. If it holds, it becomes deeper. Doubt doesn't erase trust, it verifies it. You can test this in your own life. Think of something you're certain about, a goal, a memory, a conviction. Ask yourself what would happen if it were wrong. Most people resist this because it feels threatening. But after the discomfort fades, what remains is perspective. You start to see how much of your certainty rests on habit, context, or limited information. That realization doesn't make you weaker. It makes your understanding wider. Doubt even helps you know yourself. Many people say they want self-knowledge, but avoid the uncertainty that comes with it. They hold on to stable identities. I'm strong. I'm kind. I'm logical. But these labels are fragile. Doubt cracks them open. It asks, what if I'm not? Through that crack, complexity enters. You find out you can be strong and afraid, kind and selfish, logical and emotional, all at once. The doubt doesn't destroy the self, it reveals its size. The world itself runs on uncertainty. Weather patterns, markets, ecosystems, all shift beyond prediction. People pretend control, but control is temporary. What keeps us balanced is not certainty, but adaptation, the willingness to live with not knowing. Doubt becomes a compass in this kind of world. It doesn't tell you where you're going. It keeps you aware that you're moving. Even in language, doubt has power. Words like perhaps, maybe, and I think soften speech not because they weaken it, but because they make space for others. They turn statements into conversations. They remind listeners that what's being said is open to growth. In contrast, absolute language, always, never, impossible, closes the door. Doubt keeps it open. Trusting uncertainty might sound contradictory, but it's the most stable trust you can build. Everything else can fail: beliefs, knowledge, relationships, systems, but uncertainty remains honest. It doesn't promise stability, it promises awareness. It asks for humility, not surrender. It reminds you that being wrong is not the opposite of understanding. It's part of it. The certainty of doubt isn't fear. It's the quiet recognition that truth moves, and the only way to follow it is to keep questioning, even when the answers feel close enough to touch. Fire and ice are supposed to be opposites. One burns, the other stills. One moves fast, the other stops motion. Yet there are moments when they meet, not in the physical sense, but in feeling and thought. The fire that freezes is what happens when something intense becomes so strong that it reverses itself. Anger that becomes silence, passion that turns cold, heat that stops instead of spreads. It's the point where opposites overlap and reason no longer explains what's happening. You can feel it in moments of shock. When bad news arrives, the body doesn't always react with movement or tears. Sometimes it freezes. People say, "I felt numb." That numbness isn't lack of emotion, it's too much emotion. The fire of feeling burns so hot that the system shuts down to survive. The result looks like stillness, but underneath, it's chaos. The body becomes ice to keep from melting. Love can create the same paradox. Two people care so deeply that they begin to hold each other too tightly. What started as warmth turns suffocating. Each act of love becomes a form of control. The fire that once kept them alive begins to freeze them in place. They stop growing because they can't risk losing the heat they built together. When love becomes preservation instead of movement, it cools into something rigid. The passion is still there, but it's trapped under its own weight. The idea appears in art and myth too. Ancient stories often describe gods of fire who destroy as easily as they create. The same flame that gives light also blinds. Prometheus brings fire to humanity and suffers for it. Fire as knowledge frees and punishes at once. In Norse mythology, the world begins where fire and ice meet. Creation born from contradiction. The fire that freezes is not just a poetic phrase, it's a condition of existence. Energy and stillness make the same spark. In the natural world, opposites meet constantly. At the edges of glaciers, volcanic heat meets frozen mass. The contact creates fog, neither solid nor liquid nor gas, a space between states. Something similar happens in thought. When two opposing ideas touch, certainty and doubt, belief and skepticism, the mind produces mist. Not clarity, not confusion, but suspension. The fire of conviction meets the cold of hesitation, and what forms isn't agreement but awareness. People experience this during intense creation. Writers, scientists, artists, anyone driven by obsession, reach a point where the work consumes them. They feel alive and trapped at once. The fire of inspiration becomes so strong that it stops them from moving forward. They revise endlessly, unable to finish. The same force that began the project freezes it. The fire becomes its own ice. Every perfectionist knows this feeling. You want to capture life so completely that the effort stops life from happening. In politics and belief, this paradox turns dangerous. When conviction burns too brightly, it hardens into ideology. What started as passion for change becomes resistance to change. People defend their ideas as if they were frozen relics. The warmth of belief that once inspired compassion becomes cold certainty. They stop listening, stop evolving. The fire that could have united divides instead. Meaning collapses not because of confusion, but because of excess clarity. Even nature hides this reversal in plain sight. Fire doesn't only destroy, it preserves. Scientists study fire scars in trees, rings left by past burns that record survival, not death. Ice doesn't only preserve, it can fracture stone, reshape mountains, and erase what once seemed permanent. Both elements change what they touch, but not always in expected ways. A forest burns and grows back richer. A glacier melts and floods the ground, feeding new life. Opposites contain each other. The world moves forward through contradiction, not harmony. You can see it in emotion. Grief and joy often share the same space. People laugh at funerals or cry during celebrations. The body doesn't separate feelings neatly. Grief can burn with love. Joy can freeze in disbelief. These contradictions don't cancel each other. They prove that emotions don't obey logic. The human heart lives at the temperature where fire freezes. Even language mirrors this tension. We say, frozen with fear, burning with desire, cold rage, fiery calm. We use opposites to describe what logic can't. The words recognize that extremes meet at their limits. The most passionate love can make you still. The deepest calm can set something inside you burning. The mind uses contradiction to reach what reason can't explain. Science has its own version of this, at absolute zero, where everything should stop moving. Quantum mechanics predicts a flicker of motion that never disappears. Even when all energy should freeze, something still burns beneath it. The universe refuses total stillness. The smallest particles keep vibrating, as if fire hides inside the coldest place imaginable. Physics itself admits that opposites never fully separate. There's a quiet wisdom in that. The fire that freezes reminds you that opposites define each other. Heat without cold loses meaning. Movement without stillness disappears into blur. Certainty without doubt becomes blindness. The collapse of meaning isn't failure, it's the edge of understanding. When you reach the point where contradiction feels true, you've gone past explanation into experience. You're standing where the elements meet, where the mind stops trying to choose sides. The fire that freezes burns on, not as destruction, but as balance, the living paradox that keeps the world alive. We draw lines to make sense of the world, lines between right and wrong, self and other, here and there. Boundaries give shape to experience. They tell us what belongs and what doesn't. But if you look closely, most lines don't hold. They blur, fade, and fold back on themselves. Every boundary carries its own contradiction. It defines by separating, but it also connects what it divides. The line that keeps things apart is often the same one that proves they were never truly separate. You can see this in something simple, like a coastline. On a map, the edge of the land looks clean, a smooth curve drawn by a pen. But in reality, a coastline has no fixed line. It changes with every tide, every wave, every grain of sand that shifts. The more precisely you measure it, the longer it becomes, until it stops being a line at all. The line breaks itself by being too real. Nature refuses to stay within the boundaries we draw. The same happens in language. Words are supposed to divide meaning. This means that, not this. Yet language constantly crosses its own borders. Take the word home. It means a place, but also a feeling. It can describe a house, a country, a person, or even a memory. Each time you use it, the boundary shifts. The word breaks its own line because it holds more than one truth at once. The illusion of precision fades when the meaning depends on context. People do this too. We think of the self as a clear outline, our body, our mind, our choices. But the boundary between me and not me is porous. You breathe in the air that trees release. Your cells replace themselves using material that once belonged to something else. Every thought is shaped by language, culture, and memory, things that came from outside you. The line that defines you exists only as long as you believe in it. Look closer, and you find that the self is a flow, not a wall. In relationships, boundaries create safety. We say, "I need space," or "This is where I end and you begin." That's true and necessary. But the same line that protects also isolates. When you love someone deeply, your boundaries soften. Their happiness becomes yours. Their pain echoes in you. You don't lose yourself. You expand. A line between two people bends until it disappears, not in dependence, but in connection. The illusion of a hard border gives way to something more fluid. The line breaks, and that breaking is what allows closeness. Societies rely on lines too. Laws, borders, classifications. They keep order, but they also create division. The line between legal and illegal, citizen and foreigner, normal and abnormal. These lines pretend to be objective, yet history keeps proving how arbitrary they are. The same action can be a crime or a right, depending on which side of a border it happens. The boundary sustains its own illusion of necessity, but it changes when power shifts. The line that defines identity eventually exposes how fragile identity really is. Art reveals this most clearly. A painter draws a boundary to define form, but the beauty often lies where the line blurs. In abstract art, the boundary dissolves completely. The viewer's mind finishes what the artist began. In poetry, a line break isn't just structure. It's a moment where meaning pauses, reshapes, or contradicts itself. The break makes space for silence to speak. The poem's strength comes not from its lines holding, but from where they fail, where they open into new meaning. In thought, boundaries work the same way. Philosophy tries to separate knowing from not knowing, mind from matter, truth from perception. But each new system ends up erasing its own distinctions. The more deeply you analyze, the more overlap you find. The boundary between subject and object fades when you realize that observation changes what is observed. The line that was meant to define reality becomes part of the illusion itself. Even morality bends this way. People like to think of right and wrong as clear, but most real choices live in between. A lie can protect. Mercy can look like weakness. Justice can harm. The line breaks when you meet the complexity of life. The illusion of purity vanishes, and what remains is context, messy, human, and true. The boundary that seems so strong reveals that it was only ever a tool, not a truth. Technology gives another example. Digital space promises sharp lines, binary code, yes or no, on or off. Yet even computers now deal in probabilities. Artificial intelligence doesn't follow strict logic. It predicts patterns. It works in shades of likelihood, not absolutes. The very systems built on clear lines now thrive in uncertainty. The line between machine and human thought, once clear, blurs more every year. We built the boundary to separate us, but in building it, we taught the machine to cross it. Emotion plays with this paradox constantly. Anger can hide fear. Joy can contain grief. You can feel both proud and ashamed at the same time. The mind draws lines between feelings to stay organized, but life ignores the map. Emotions flow into one another until you can't tell where one ends and the next begins. The line between opposites is where truth often lives, the place where meaning collapses, but understanding begins. At every level, language, identity, morality, thought, the line promises control. It helps us navigate, define, and build. But control is temporary. The moment a boundary is tested, it reveals its own limits. Every clear distinction hides a bridge beneath it. The line doesn't just divide, it also connects. The illusion of separation keeps us safe until we're ready to see that what we tried to keep apart was never apart at all. Where the line breaks itself is where honesty begins. It's the moment when categories fail, when the mind admits that it can't contain what's living. That's not chaos, it's awareness. It's the recognition that every border is both a wall and a doorway, and every line you draw carries the possibility of its own undoing. Most choices seem clear. You stand at a crossroads, you pick a direction, and life moves forward. But some choices don't appear like that at all. They exist beneath awareness, shaping outcomes before you know you've decided. They're invisible, not because they're rare, but because they live inside what feels inevitable. You choose by living, by thinking, by not acting. The invisible choice is the one made in silence, when no one notices that a decision was made. Think of someone who stays in a job they no longer enjoy. They don't wake up one morning and declare, "I've decided to stay unhappy." They simply don't act. The decision hides inside inaction. Time passes, and what began as hesitation becomes permanence. They might say, "I had no choice," but that's not true. The choice was made in the moment of not choosing. The invisible path is the one that continues when you stop walking. You can see this in relationships too. Two people drift apart, not through a single argument or betrayal, but through 1,000 small silences. No one says, "Let's grow distant." It happens quietly, through avoidance, through moments when one person doesn't reach out and the other doesn't ask why. The invisible choice isn't about taking a step. It's about not noticing the ground shifting beneath you. By the time you see it, the path has already changed. The mind hides decisions this way because certainty feels safer than freedom. To see every choice would be overwhelming. So it narrows the field, presenting only a few options at a time. The rest vanish into the background, but they're still there. Every yes implies 100 no's. Every door you walk through closes others you never saw. The invisible choice is built into focus itself. You can't see what you're not looking at. There's a moment in chess when a player fixates on one move. It looks promising, so they stop considering the others. They think they're analyzing deeply, but they've already chosen. Their attention becomes the choice. The rest of the board fades. Later, when the move fails, they realize they never saw the full position. Life works much the same way. You think you're deciding rationally, but focus itself is bias. You choose what to see, and by doing that, you decide what to ignore. Sometimes invisible choices come from habit. You wake up, follow a routine, react to what's in front of you. The pattern feels natural, but each repetition is a decision disguised as automatic behavior. You decide who you are through what you repeat. A person who avoids confrontation isn't neutral. They've chosen peace over clarity, comfort over honesty. They just didn't name it as a choice. Habit hides agency behind familiarity. Culture shapes invisible choices too. Society offers certain scripts: how success looks, what adulthood means, what kind of life is respectable. Many people follow them without asking where they came from. They think they're choosing freely, but the options were selected for them long before. To see the invisible choice, you have to notice the limits of what's been presented. You have to ask who drew the map you're following. In moments of fear, invisible choices take another form. People often believe fear stops them from choosing, but it doesn't. Fear decides for them. It says, stay where you are, and they obey. The decision hides behind the emotion. This isn't cowardice, it's survival instinct. But over time, letting fear choose becomes a habit of thought. You stop recognizing it as a force outside yourself. You call it intuition, practicality, or timing. The choice stays invisible because it wears the mask of reason. Even language hides decisions. The words you use shape how you see the world. When you say, I can't, you often mean, I won't. When you say, it's complicated, you might mean, I don't want to decide. The phrasing softens the truth, making the absence of choice sound like necessity. The invisible decision is buried in grammar, the subtle difference between ability and will. Philosophy calls this determinism, the idea that everything is caused by something else, leaving no room for true choice. But even if that's true, we still experience decision. We still feel the weight of responsibility. The invisible choice might not be about freedom in the cosmic sense. It's about awareness. You may not control the conditions, but you can see when you're being carried by them. Noticing is the first act of reclaiming. In creative work, invisible choices define style. A writer might think their voice is natural, but it's made of countless unnoticed preferences, word length, rhythm. Each line reflects invisible decisions made over years of reading, listening, and failing. The artist doesn't plan them, they emerge from pattern. This is why imitation never quite works. You can copy someone's visible choices, but not the invisible ones that gave those choices life. Memory makes its own invisible edits. You recall moments not as they were, but as they fit your story now. You forget some things, emphasize others. That too is a form of decision. The mind chooses coherence over accuracy. You think you're remembering, but you're revising. The story feels natural because you made it unconsciously. The invisible choice is the one that rewrites the past to make the present bearable. Even silence can be a decision. In a meeting, one person speaks and another stays quiet. The silence seems passive, but it carries weight. It allows something to pass unchallenged. It shapes the outcome. The invisible choice in silence is to let the moment stand. Inaction becomes direction. The invisible choice isn't mysterious, it's ordinary. It's the space between thought and action, the unnoticed point where attention becomes direction. Most of life moves that way, not through deliberate planning, but through quiet drift. The question isn't how to stop it, but how to see it. Because once you notice the invisible choice, it stops being invisible. It becomes something you can name, something you can own. And in that moment of recognition, you realize the paths were never fixed at all. They were drawn in motion, waiting for you to see that even choosing not to choose was a choice. Faith is usually imagined as something directed outward. You believe in something larger than yourself, an idea, a person, a force, a God. It's a gesture of trust that reaches beyond what you can prove. But faith can loop. It can turn back toward you in ways that are quiet and strange. The thought that something greater might believe in you, not as an act of devotion, but as recognition, changes the shape of belief itself. It raises a question few people ask. What if faith isn't one-sided? What if what you call belief is a conversation you didn't know you were having? Imagine a person sitting alone, praying. They speak into silence, hoping for comfort or guidance. No answer comes in words, yet something responds. A calm, a presence, a sense of being seen. Most people describe that as faith working. They interpret the quiet as divine listening, but it could also be something else. It could be the moment when faith folds back on itself. When the trust they send outward returns as awareness, they feel believed in because they are finally believing in their own capacity to reach. Psychology touches on this in another language. The human mind builds models of relationship early in life. You learn what care feels like from the people who raise you. Later, those patterns shape how you imagine the divine. If you felt seen as a child, your concept of God often reflects that. If you felt abandoned, God feels distant. Faith becomes a mirror, but even then, something deeper moves under it. The desire to be recognized, to feel that your existence matters. The God that believes in you is not just the one you worship, it's the reflection of your need to be witnessed by meaning itself. Writers and artists often describe a similar experience. They feel guided by something outside themselves, as if ideas come through them instead of from them. They call it inspiration, muse, or grace. The process feels reciprocal. You give effort and something invisible gives back. The act of creation becomes a kind of faith. You believe that the next line will appear, that the unknown will meet you halfway. In that exchange, belief becomes mutual. You trust the work, and the work trusts you. This looping faith appears in ordinary life too. Think about teaching. A good teacher doesn't just believe in a student's potential. They hold that belief until the student begins to see it themselves. The student borrows the teacher's faith until it becomes their own. That's what changes them. The loop closes when they start to act as if the belief came from within. In a way, that's what people mean when they say they found faith. They stop thinking of it as something given and start seeing it as something that returns. Religion formalizes this in doctrine, but the essence is the same. Many traditions say that humans are made in the image of the divine. If that's true, then belief can't move in only one direction. To believe in God is to awaken the part of yourself that mirrors belief. When you pray, you're not just reaching outward, you're activating what's already within. The God that believes in you is that spark responding. It's not about ego, it's about recognition. A line between self and divine becomes thin enough that both sides listen. Doubt, oddly enough, makes the loop stronger. When belief wavers, you start to wonder who you are without it. You ask harder questions. You demand reasons. In that struggle, faith begins to mature. You stop believing because you're told to, and start believing because you've tested everything else. The God that believes in you doesn't disappear during doubt, it waits. The silence between questions is the proof of patience, not absence. It's the moment when faith stops being obedience and becomes trust in the process itself. You can see this same pattern in how people survive hardship. Someone loses everything and says later that they were carried through it. That language isn't about miracles. It's about endurance that felt borrowed, strength that didn't seem to come from them. Maybe that strength was always theirs, awakened by crisis. Or maybe it came from the unseen network of care, friends, strangers, moments of grace that surrounded them. Either way, the faith that sustained them believed back. It said, keep going, even when they couldn't. There's a psychological truth here too. Belief changes behavior. When you believe something believes in you, you act differently. You carry yourself with a kind of quiet accountability. You make choices as if someone is watching who wants you to do well. Whether or not that presence is real in a metaphysical sense doesn't matter. The effect is real. The loop becomes self-sustaining. Faith strengthens action, and action strengthens faith. In literature, this loop appears in stories where characters meet versions of themselves reflected in others. A mentor, a friend, even an enemy can become the one who believes in you before you can. Their faith lights a path you didn't know you could walk. You realize that belief doesn't always start inside. Sometimes it's caught, like a spark passed from one mind to another. The divine can work that way too, not as a figure above, but as the current that moves between people who see each other clearly. Even science echoes this loop in an unexpected way. Quantum theory suggests that observation affects what's observed. The act of looking helps determine reality. In a poetic sense, belief works the same way. The world reveals itself according to the attention you give it. Faith is a kind of observation. You see potential, and by seeing, give it space to exist. The God that believes in you is that same principle turned inward. The gaze of meaning meets your own. When faith loops back on itself, it becomes less about worship and more about relationship. It's not a hierarchy, but a dialogue. You don't stand beneath something higher, you stand within it. You believe. And you are believed in. You reach, and something reaches back. The power isn't in the proof, but in the exchange. The quiet, continuous recognition that belief, when it's alive, never moves in only one direction. Some questions aren't meant to be answered. They exist to fill space, to release something that can't stay quiet. You ask them not because you expect a reply, but because the act of asking feels necessary. These are riddles with no listener, questions that live in the air long after you've spoken them. They echo back, and in their return they change shape. The echo becomes the only answer. You can see this in grief. Someone loses a loved one and says, "Why did this happen?" They know no answer will come. The question itself is the expression of loss. It isn't a request for logic. It's a way to speak pain into existence. The riddle has no listener because the only one who could answer is gone. The silence that follows isn't empty. It's heavy with what cannot be resolved. The question becomes a presence. Art often begins this way. A poet doesn't write to deliver answers. They write to explore a question so large it can't be closed. Every poem asks something impossible. What does love mean? What does time take? Why do we stay when everything leaves? The reader becomes part of the riddle, not its solution. The artist sends the question out, knowing it might never land. But that's the point. Meaning grows in the echo. You can feel this in conversations that end too soon. Maybe you said something honest, something vulnerable, and the other person didn't respond. The silence afterward can feel cruel, but it's also a mirror. It forces you to hear yourself without the comfort of an answer. The riddle with no listener turns inward then. You become both speaker and audience. What started as communication becomes reflection. Sometimes the question isn't spoken at all. You carry it in thought, unformed but constant. Am I where I'm supposed to be? Does anyone really know me? What if I never find what I'm looking for? These questions loop quietly beneath the surface of daily life. They don't interrupt, but they guide. You might change jobs, move cities, fall in love, or walk away, all because of questions you've never said aloud. The riddle doesn't need a listener because it already shapes how you live. Philosophy is built on such riddles. Questions like, what is truth, or who am I, have been asked for centuries, and every answer leads to another question. Each generation repeats the same echoes, not because they expect to end them, but because the asking itself defines what it means to think. The riddle survives precisely because it has no listener who can finish it. The echo is what keeps it alive. In modern life, people often avoid these open questions. We're taught to seek solutions, to close loops, to be efficient. But some parts of existence don't fit that model. When you try to answer a riddle that has no listener, you distort it. You turn wonder into data, mystery into task. There's value in letting the question stand, unanswered, unresolved, unowned. It keeps humility alive. It reminds you that knowledge is only one kind of understanding. Technology has made it easy to believe every question can be answered. Type a query and something replies. Search engines turn curiosity into certainty, but not all questions belong there. What makes something beautiful? Why do I forgive? These can't be solved by algorithms. They're too human. When no one listens, when no database responds, you face the raw silence of being. It's uncomfortable, but real. It's what thinking feels like before it becomes opinion. There's a scene that plays out in everyone's life at some point. You stand outside at night, looking up at the stars. The scale of it all makes language small. You might whisper something, a question about purpose, about whether anyone's out there. The sky doesn't answer, yet the moment feels alive, not empty. The riddle doesn't need a listener because the act of asking connects you to everything you can't understand. The question itself is participation. Even memory works like this. You revisit old decisions and wonder what might have happened if you'd chosen differently. You can't reach the person you were, and the past can't reply, but you keep asking. The riddle echoes through time, not to get an answer, but to stay in contact with what's lost. The echo is how you remember. In relationships, unanswered questions linger long after parting. Did they ever care? Was I the problem? These thoughts replay, sometimes for years. The person you're asking is gone, maybe even unreachable. The silence fills in what they might have said. You start to supply the answers yourself, not because they're true, but because the mind needs closure. Yet part of you knows the real answer doesn't exist. The riddle's power lies in that knowing, in the ache of wanting what can't be returned. Writers talk about the reader who isn't there, the imagined person they write to. This figure doesn't exist, but they guide the voice, shape the tone. The riddle with no listener does the same for life. You live as if someone, somewhere, is listening to your thoughts. Maybe it's God, maybe it's your future self, maybe it's no one at all. The illusion gives weight to words that might otherwise vanish. Sometimes silence itself becomes the listener. When you speak into a room alone, you hear your voice bounce back, softer, altered. It proves you exist. That's all the echo really is, a confirmation that something left you and returned changed. A riddle with no listener doesn't disappear. It circles back, stripped of certainty, carrying a trace of its journey. It reminds you that meaning isn't always in the answer. Sometimes it's in the endurance of the question, the echo that keeps returning even when no one is there to hear it. A mind is a room made of mirrors. Every thought reflects another. Every question reveals a different angle of the same image. You turn a corner expecting a clear view, but instead find another reflection, slightly altered, repeating what you already know in new form. It can feel infinite, this maze of reasoning, memory, and perception. The more you try to reach the center, the more you realize there might not be one. You can see this when you try to understand yourself. You ask simple questions. Who am I? Why do I do what I do? At first, you think the answers will bring clarity. You look inward and find a story, your childhood, your choices, your habits. You explain yourself through cause and effect. But that story only leads to more mirrors. Why did those choices feel necessary? What shaped those habits? Each answer becomes another reflection, showing truth, but never the whole of it. The more you look, the more layers you find. The self turns into an image chasing itself. Psychology often describes this as introspection, but even science admits the process has limits. The brain studying the brain is like a hand trying to grab itself. The act of observing changes what's observed. If you try too hard to define yourself, you start to distort the view. You might become attached to an identity just because it feels neat, or reject one that feels uncomfortable. The mirror shows what you expect to see. The maze grows from your own need for a clean reflection. Social life builds new layers. Every person who knows you holds a version of you that's slightly different. You have the friend version, the family version, the stranger version. You act, they respond, and together you create another reflection. None of them are wrong, but none are complete. You move through life adjusting to these mirrors, trying to keep the images aligned. The effort can be exhausting. Sometimes you stop and wonder which reflection is real, but maybe none of them are meant to be the final image. Maybe truth is in the movement between them, the constant adjustment that keeps you alive. Memory plays tricks in the maze. It acts like a mirror that bends over time. You look back on your past and think you're seeing what happened, but you're really seeing what you remember. Each recollection is shaped by emotion, by what you need to believe now. People remember moments not as they were, but as they make sense today. You might recall an argument as more painful, a success as more pure. The reflection sharpens or fades with time, and yet you trust it. The mirror doesn't lie, it adapts. You navigate the maze using images that change as you walk. Belief adds another layer. What you believe about the world filters what you see in it. Someone who expects betrayal will find it even where it doesn't exist. Someone who believes in kindness will spot it in small gestures others overlook. The mirror of belief reflects reality through preference. This isn't self-deception, it's how perception works. The brain fills gaps to make the picture coherent. You think you're seeing truth, but you're seeing a version that fits your map of the world. Each time you question it, the reflection shifts again. Technology has turned this mental maze outward. Social media builds literal mirrors of identity. Profiles, photos, comments. People curate reflections, polishing the parts they like and dimming the rest. Then they look back through the same platforms to see how others reflect them. Approval becomes another kind of reflection. The loop feeds itself until no one remembers what came first, the self or the image of it. The maze has gone public. The reflections multiply faster than anyone can track. In relationships, this dynamic becomes intimate. Two people mirror each other's moods and fears without meaning to. When one withdraws, the other feels abandoned and withdraws too. When one softens, the other mirrors that warmth. The cycle can heal or harm, depending on awareness. The mirror maze of connection teaches that perception is never solitary. Every reflection is shared. You see yourself most clearly in how others respond, and they do the same through you. The maze becomes collective, a hall built from overlapping minds. Philosophers have wrestled with this for centuries. Descartes tried to find a solid foundation by saying, "I think, therefore I am." But even that was another reflection, the certainty of being based on the act of thought itself. Later thinkers pointed out that thought doesn't prove existence, it just shows experience. The mind proves itself by watching itself think, and in doing so, it loops endlessly. The more we look for an unbreakable point of origin, the more mirrors we find. The maze never ends because it's made of the same material as the seeker. Dreams reveal the same pattern. You wake from a vivid scene and try to explain it. You assign meaning. This image stands for fear, that one for hope. But the explanation is another dream layered over the first. The mirror interprets itself. The unconscious doesn't speak in straight lines. It reflects symbols against each other. You spend your waking life decoding what your sleeping mind already answered in its own language. The maze extends across the boundary between waking and dreaming, thought and instinct. There are moments when the mirrors line up. Maybe you're walking alone or reading something that speaks directly to you, and for a second, everything feels clear. You see yourself and the world without distortion. Then the feeling fades. The maze returns. But that flash of alignment shows that the reflections are traps, they're tools. Each one reveals a part of truth you couldn't see otherwise. The difficulty isn't the existence of the maze, it's forgetting that you're already inside it. Every answer the mind gives leads to another reflection, because answers are built from questions. Understanding isn't a single image, but a sequence of mirrors turning endlessly. You can't escape the reflections, but you can learn to walk through them with awareness. Each wall that looks solid is only another surface waiting to show you what you've become. The maze doesn't end because it's made of thought itself, and thought, by nature, keeps reflecting. Truth is often imagined as something pure, solid, fixed, untouched by need. People talk about the whole truth as if it could exist without context. But truth isn't separate from survival. It bends to fit the moment, to stay alive inside people, inside stories, inside systems. Sometimes truth must disguise itself just to be heard. The truth that lies isn't deceitful, it adapts. It bends, because staying unbent would mean disappearing. You can see this in history. Every generation retells the past in a way that fits the present. facts are rearranged, motives softened, timelines blurred. The goal isn't always to deceive, it's to keep meaning alive. If history were told in its full, unfiltered brutality, most people couldn't bear it. Societies polish memory so they can keep functioning. The truth survives not by standing still, but by shifting shape enough to be carried forward. The cost is accuracy, but the reward is endurance. At a personal level, people do the same thing. Someone who's gone through trauma might tell their story differently over time. At first, they speak in fragments. Later, they smooth the edges, change the tone, maybe even alter details. The story they tell isn't false, it's the version they can live with. The truth adjusts to what the mind can handle. If they told it exactly as it happened every time, they might never heal. The lie isn't betrayal, it's protection. Even everyday honesty works this way. You might say, "I'm fine," when you're not. You might tell a child, "It's going to be okay," when you can't be sure. Those words aren't meant to deceive, they're meant to stabilize. The truth that lies knows timing. It waits until someone is ready to hear it. Sometimes it takes years for a person to face what's real, and until then, half-truths keep them afloat. In that sense, the lie is a bridge, not a wall. Science and philosophy wrestle with the same paradox. Theories start as models of truth, but they simplify the world to make it understandable. Newton's laws described motion with precision, until Einstein's relativity showed their limits. Yet Newton's version still works for most practical purposes. The truth didn't die when a new one appeared. It bent. It became a local truth, accurate enough to survive where it was useful. Every honest model carries a small lie inside it, a simplification that keeps it working. Art tells this story more directly. A novel or a film can reveal emotional truth through fiction. The events never happened, yet the feelings ring true. People recognize themselves in invented worlds. The artist lies about facts to tell the truth about experience. It's why we say something felt real, even when we know it wasn't. The truth inside fiction survives because it hides behind invention. The lie is the vessel that carries it safely past disbelief. In social life, honesty often depends on power. A person in danger may have to lie to survive. Someone living under censorship may hide truth in symbols. A whistleblower might release information under another name. These aren't moral failures, they're strategies. When truth threatens the powerful, it must move carefully. It wears disguises to pass through the gates. The truth that lies to survive doesn't disappear. It adapts to the conditions of control. Relationships reveal this tension most intimately. Total honesty sounds noble, but it can also wound. When someone asks, "Do you love me?" the answer might be complicated. Love may exist, but not in the way the question expects. In that moment, people often bend honesty to spare another person or themselves. They edit words to keep connection intact. The truth still lives there, but it's softened so it can stay in the room. If honesty is a flame, compassion is the glass that shapes it. Too exposed, it burns out. Even the body lies to keep truth alive. Memory changes details to protect the mind. Perception filters what would overwhelm the senses. The brain edits reality constantly, filling in blanks, brightening darkness, muting noise. What you see isn't the whole truth. It's the version your system can sustain. Complete accuracy would mean overload. The mind's quiet distortions aren't flaws, they're defenses. The body tells its truth through balance, not absolutes. Culture runs on shared fictions. Money, law, and identity all depend on collective belief. These systems work because people agree to treat symbols as real. The truth that lies here isn't malicious, it's structural. The dollar has no intrinsic worth, but the belief in it holds economies together. National myths exaggerate unity to preserve belonging. The stories aren't accurate, but they function. A perfect truth would collapse the structure. A flexible one sustains it. Even morality isn't exempt. People speak about honesty as an absolute value, but the world forces compromise. If lying saves a life, the lie becomes an act of truth. If silence prevents harm, it's mercy disguised as omission. Ethics isn't about purity, it's about proportion. The truth that lies understands this. It knows that being right in theory doesn't matter if no one survives to apply it. There's a story told in many traditions about a teacher who offers wisdom in parables. When asked why he doesn't speak plainly, he says, "Because plain truth blinds. Wrapped in story, it can be seen." That's the essence of survival through bending. Honesty doesn't always mean transparency. Sometimes it means finding a form that lets meaning live beyond the moment. The truth that lies to survive isn't corruption, it's evolution. It shifts shape the way language, memory, and culture do. It bends not out of weakness, but resilience. Pure truth might vanish in a single encounter, unable to bear the weight of reality. The truth that adapts continues speaking long after the perfect version is gone. It learns to live through what it hides, waiting for the moment when someone, somewhere, can see it clearly again. Some doors don't lead anywhere. You open them, step through, and find yourself in another version of the same room. The surroundings shift, but the feeling stays. It's not failure. It's the structure of certain journeys. The door that opens inward forever is the one you walk through when what you're seeking isn't a destination, but an unfolding. Every attempt to arrive simply leads you deeper in. Think of how people chase self-understanding. You start with curiosity, asking who you are, what you want, what makes you different. You read, you reflect, you change jobs or partners or philosophies. Each shift feels like progress, but after a while, you see that every insight opens another question. You never reach a fixed version of yourself. Each discovery undoes the last. The door you thought led out simply leads further in. The mind doesn't end at knowing. It expands by circling itself. This happens in therapy too. Someone begins because they want answers. They want to stop hurting or find clarity. Over time, they realize the process isn't about solving, but noticing. The same patterns appear in new forms. The same fears wear new names. Each session opens another door inward. The deeper they go, the more they understand that healing doesn't mean closure. It means learning to walk through doors without expecting to exit the house. The passage is the work. Spiritual practice works in the same way. Meditation, prayer, reflection, all promise access to peace or enlightenment. Yet those who stay with it long enough discover that arrival never comes. The moment you think you've reached it, the feeling fades. The mind opens another layer of restlessness. Peace turns into the awareness of still more seeking. The door that opens inward forever doesn't mock effort. It reveals that the destination was never separate from the path. The practice continues because consciousness keeps unfolding. There's a physical metaphor for this in architecture. Some old temples were built with narrow, spiraling corridors that led toward an inner sanctum. But when you reached it, you found not a chamber, but another passage, dimly lit, looping back. The structure was deliberate. The builder meant for the visitor to walk endlessly inward, not to find an end, but to lose the sense of beginning. The temple mirrored the mind, a labyrinth built to undo the idea of a center. In creative work, the same pattern appears. A writer finishes a book, an artist completes a painting, a scientist solves a problem. For a moment, they feel done. Then, the next idea begins to stir, born from the same space the last one tried to resolve. Creation doesn't stop at completion. It renews itself through dissatisfaction. The door opens inward because the impulse to make sense of the world never runs out. You finish one work only to realize it was preparation for the next. The act itself is the arrival, even though it never ends. Relationships follow this rhythm too. Two people think they've finally understood each other. Then something changes. Time, circumstance, memory. They must begin again, learning the new versions of the same person. The relationship deepens, not by staying fixed, but by reopening. Love that survives does so because it knows how to enter itself again and again. The door opens inward forever because connection has no final shape. Every moment of understanding creates room for another layer to appear. Even death, the most certain form of ending, fits this pattern in a different register. Every culture imagines what comes after: heaven, rebirth, dissolution. But none of those answers close the question. They shift it inward, from body to spirit, from existence to meaning. The door of death, like all the others, opens toward mystery, not conclusion. The fact that no one returns with a final report keeps the passage alive. It remains the one door that reminds all others what it means to keep opening. There's a quiet form of this in everyday life. You clean your house, and it becomes messy again. You learn patience, then lose it in traffic. You find peace in solitude, then crave company. Each cycle feels like repetition, but it's closer to growth. Each return opens something new in the same space. The work never ends because the self doesn't. The door keeps opening inward because what's inside keeps changing. Philosophers have wrestled with this idea since the beginning of thought. Zeno's paradox claimed that motion itself is impossible, that every step can be divided infinitely, so you never actually arrive. The math has been resolved, but the metaphor still holds. Human understanding moves by halves, never whole. Each solution contains the seed of another question. The mind moves endlessly inward, not because it's broken, but because infinity is its natural landscape. You can feel this in quiet moments. Sitting alone, you might notice how your thoughts fold in on themselves. One idea leads to another, then back again. You start wondering who's doing the thinking, the thought or the thinker. The loop doesn't end. A mind keeps walking through its own doors, trying to find where it began. But there's no first step, no final room. Awareness itself is the motion, the act of turning the handle again and again. The door that opens inward forever is both comfort and challenge. It means you can't be finished, but you're never truly lost either. Every turn leads deeper into what's already yours. You can't escape yourself, and you don't need to. The point isn't to get through the passage, but to understand that the passage is what you are. The space between each step is where meaning lives. The opening never ends because it isn't meant to, because consciousness, once aware of itself, always keeps walking.